At the funeral, my wife left me a passbook and my daughter threw it in the trash, saying, "Throw it away." Dad. Mom never had any money anyway. I watched the only piece of paper my wife had kept for 40 years land among the paper plates and leftover potato salad. I did not say a word. I simply stood up, walked over to the bin and retrieved it while my son-in-law laughed and called me a hoarder. I left the room and went to the bank anyway. When the director scanned that old yellowed book, he turned white. "Please stay here, Mr. Hayes," he whispered, his hands trembling. "We need to call the police." I thought I was in trouble, but I was wrong. The trouble was just beginning for everyone else. I am Virgil Hayes, 68 years old, and I have spent my life working double shifts at the steel mill to ensure my family never went hungry. My hands are rough, my back is bent, and my skin tells the story of decades of hard labor under the hot sun and blast furnaces. I thought I had raised a daughter who understood the value of $1 and the weight of family loyalty. I was wrong. Last week I buried Etta, my wife of 45 years. She was the love of my life, a quiet woman who stretched every penny and fixed my lunch pail every morning before the sun came up. We lived simply in a 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood that used to be rough but had slowly gentrified around us. Etta was gone and the silence in the house was deafening. But the silence did not last long. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. The smell of lilies and stale coffee still hung heavy in the living room. The guests had only left an hour ago. I was sitting in my recliner, the leather worn smooth by years of rest after long shifts, staring at a photo of Etta and me from our honeymoon in Atlantic City. I just wanted to close my eyes and imagine she was in the kitchen humming a gospel tune while she dried the dishes. But I could not find peace. The noise started in the master bedroom. It was the sound of drawers being ripped open and hangers being shoved aside. It sounded like a robbery, but it was not thieves. It was Kendra, my only daughter, and her husband, Derek. Kendra had arrived at the funeral in a black designer dress that cost more than my first car. She did not cry during the service. She spent the entire time checking her phone and whispering to Derek. Derek is a real estate agent who drives a leased BMW and smiles with too many teeth. He has never looked me in the eye man to man. He looks at me like I am the help. Now, in the house that Etta and I had paid off 10 years ago, they were moving through the rooms like a swarm of locusts. I stood up, my knees popping, and walked to the bedroom door. Kendra was pulling Etta's Sunday hats out of the closet and tossing them onto the floor. Derek was knocking on the walls, checking for hollow spots, maybe looking for a wall safe. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sounding raspy and weak even to my own ears. "Etta has not been gone 6 hours." Kendra did not even look at me. She kept rifling through the jewelry box, dumping Etta's costume pearls onto the bedspread. "We are just looking for the insurance papers, Dad," she said, her voice clipped and impatient, "and checking to see if Mom hid any cash. You know how old people are stashing money in mattresses. We need to know what we are working with here." I felt a heat rise up the back of my neck. "That is your mother's room," I said. "Show some respect." Derek scoffed. He was opening the nightstand drawer, the one where Etta kept her Bible and reading glasses. "Respect does not pay the bills, Virgil," he said, dropping the Mr. Hayes formality entirely. "This place is a dump. We need to clear it out fast if we want to list it before the market dips next month. The nursing home costs $3,000 a month, and we are not paying for it out of our pockets." I gripped the doorframe. "I am not going to a nursing home," I said firmly. "This is my house." For now, Derek muttered under his breath. They ignored me and continued their hunt. It was brutal to watch. Every object they touched was a memory for me. The ceramic cat on the dresser was a gift from our 25th anniversary. Derek knocked it over while reaching for a box behind it and didn't even pause when it shattered on the hardwood floor. Kendra was going through the closet, throwing Etta's coats into a pile she had designated for donation. "She kept nothing of value," Kendra complained, kicking a pair of sturdy walking shoes aside. "Just junk. Decades of junk. I told you, Derek, she was hoarding trash. There is no secret stash." My heart broke, not for the things, but for the erasure of Etta's existence. To them, her life of thrift and care was just an inconvenience to be swept away. They were not looking for memories. They were looking for an inheritance they felt entitled to. Then Kendra stopped. She had pulled out the bottom drawer of the heavy oak dresser, the one that stuck if you didn't pull it just right. In the back corner, wrapped carefully in a white lace handkerchief, was a small blue book. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that handkerchief. I had bought it for Etta when we were courting. "What is this?" Kendra said, pulling the cloth away. She held up a small blue booklet. The cover was faded and the edges were soft and fraying. It was a bank passbook from a local savings and loan that had merged with a big national bank years ago. Derek looked over her shoulder. "Open it. Maybe the old lady had some sense after all." Kendra flipped it open. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then she let out a loud, harsh laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "Oh my God, you have got to be kidding me," she said. "Look at this." She shoved the book toward Derek. June 1980. Derek read aloud, mocking a serious tone. "Deposit $50. Balance $50. He flipped to the end. "There are no other entries. It is blank. She opened an account 40 years ago with $50 and forgot about it." Kendra shook her head, giggling. $50. That would not even buy lunch today. She probably thought she was being such a big shot opening a savings account. God, she was so country sometimes. Always acting like she was building an empire with pennies. The way she spoke about her mother made my stomach turn. Etta had worked cleaning houses to save those pennies. "It is worthless," Derek said, dismissing it. "Just like the rest of this stuff." Kendra looked at me standing in the doorway. She held the book up between two fingers like it was contaminated. "Here, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Here is your big inheritance. $50 from 1980. Go buy yourself a nice dinner." Then she did something unforgivable. She did not hand it to me. She crumpled the book in her hand, bending the spine, and tossed it toward the wastebasket in the corner of the room. It missed and landed on the floor next to a pile of dirty tissues. "Throw it away, Dad," she said, turning back to the closet. "Mom never had any money anyway. It is just clutter." Derek walked over to me and put a heavy hand on my shoulder. He squeezed a little too hard. "Look, Virgil, let's be real. We are doing you a favor. We are going to get a dumpster here tomorrow. You need to sign the power of attorney papers so we can handle the sale. You are obviously grieving and not thinking straight. We will find you a nice room at Shady Pines. It has a TV room. You will like it." He looked down at the crumpled passbook on the floor and kicked it with the toe of his expensive Italian loafer, sliding it further into the dust bunnies under the bed. "And stop saving garbage," he added. "It is embarrassing." I looked at the two of them. My daughter, who I had bounced on my knee. My son-in-law, who I had welcomed into my home. They saw a broken old man. They saw a house to be liquidated. They saw a life that meant nothing. I did not scream. I wanted to. I wanted to roar like the furnaces I used to tend. But Etta always told me that silence is louder than noise if you use it right. I walked past Derek. I knelt down on the floor. My knees cracked loudly in the quiet room. I reached under the bed and retrieved the passbook. I smoothed out the cover, trying to flatten the crease Kendra had made. I blew the dust off the blue cover. I stood up and put the book in the inside pocket of my funeral suit jacket right next to my heart. "Where are you going?" Kendra asked, noticing I was turning toward the hallway. "We are not done here. We need to find the deed." I walked to the front door and took my fedora off the rack. I placed it carefully on my head, adjusting the brim just the way Etta liked it. "I asked where you are going, old man," Derek snapped, stepping into the hallway, his face flushing red. "We are talking to you." I opened the front door. The cool air hit my face, drying the sweat on my forehead. I turned to look at them one last time. They stood in the ruin they had created of my sanctuary. "I am going to the bank," I said quietly. Kendra laughed, a cruel, high-pitched sound. "The bank? For what? To withdraw your $50? Go ahead, Dad. Maybe buy yourself a clue while you are at it." "She is senile," Derek muttered loud enough for me to hear. "He is losing it. Let him go. He will be back when he gets hungry." I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. I heard the lock click. It sounded like the final beat of a heart that had stopped loving. I walked down the steps past the weeds Derek had complained about and onto the sidewalk. I did not look back. I clutched the book in my pocket. I did not know what was in it, really. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was just $50. But it was Etta's $50. And that made it worth more than their souls. I started walking toward downtown, not knowing that the little blue book against my chest was about to bring the whole world crashing down on their heads. The automatic glass doors of the First National Bank slid open with a soft hiss, and a blast of air conditioning hit my face. It felt cold against the sweat that had gathered on my forehead during the walk from my house. I stepped onto the polished marble floor and immediately felt like an intruder. My funeral suit was wrinkled, and there was dust on the knees of my trousers from where I had knelt on the floor to retrieve the passbook. I probably looked like a man who had slept on a park bench. The bank was silent except for the low hum of computers and the soft tapping of keyboards. Everyone looked clean. Everyone looked rich. I clutched the small blue book in my pocket tighter, my hand sweating against the worn paper. I pulled a ticket from the machine and waited. When my number was called, I walked up to window number 4. Behind the glass sat a young man with slicked back hair and a suit that was too tight. His name tag read, Justin. He was typing on his phone and didn't even look up when I approached the counter. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me, young man," I said. Justin looked up slowly. His eyes scanned me from my scuffed shoes to my old fedora. He did not smile. He let out a small sigh as if my presence was a personal inconvenience to his day. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked. But the word "sir" sounded more like an insult the way he said it. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "If you are looking for the homeless shelter, it is 3 blocks down on 4th Street. We do not have public restrooms here." I felt a flash of shame burn my cheeks. I was a deacon at my church. I had worked 40 years at the steel mill. I owned my home. But to this boy, I was just a nuisance. "I am not homeless," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "I want to check the balance on this account." I pulled the blue passbook from my pocket and slid it under the glass partition. The lace handkerchief I had wrapped it in caught on the metal tray. Justin looked at the book like it was a dead rat. He picked it up with 2 fingers. "A passbook," he said with a laugh. "We have not issued these in 20 years. This is probably closed. Look at the date, June 1980. He flipped it open and saw the $50 balance. He scoffed loud enough for the woman in the line behind me to hear. "Sir, this account has $50 in it from 40 years ago. With service fees and inactivity penalties, you probably owe us money. Just go home." I did not move. "My wife kept this book," I said firmly. "She kept it for a reason. Please just scan it." Justin rolled his eyes. "Fine," he said. He opened his computer terminal and began to type the account number from the top of the page. He typed it aggressively, hitting the keys hard. He was ready to tell me the account was dead so he could go back to his phone. He hit the enter key and waited for the rejection message. But the rejection message did not come. Instead, the screen in front of him blinked. Then it turned a bright, flashing red. A loud, piercing alarm began to ring from his computer terminal. It was not a normal beep. It was a security siren that cut through the quiet bank like a knife. Justin jumped back in his chair, his face turning pale. The screen was flashing words I could not see, but I saw the reflection of the red light in his glasses. "What is going on?" he stammered. He looked at me with fear in his eyes. "What did you give me? Is this stolen?" Suddenly, the atmosphere in the bank shifted. The security guard near the door put his hand on his holster and started walking toward me. Another guard came from the back. Customers were backing away, clutching their purses. I stood there frozen. My hands were shaking. I thought about what Kendra had said. Maybe Etta had done something wrong. Maybe she had stolen this book years ago. Maybe I was about to be arrested on the day of my wife's funeral. The alarm kept ringing. Justin was pressing buttons trying to stop it, but he was locked out. He pointed a trembling finger at me. "He is trying to hack the system," he shouted to the guard. "Arrest him." The guard grabbed my arm. "Sir, put your hands where I can see them," he barked. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. "I just wanted to check the balance," I whispered. I did not do anything. The guard twisted my arm behind my back. I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder. Tears stung my eyes. This was it. I was going to jail because I trusted a piece of trash my daughter threw away. "Stop! Let him go immediately!" The voice boomed from the back of the bank. A heavy-set man in a gray suit came running out of the executive offices. It was Mr. Thornton, the bank director. I recognized him. He and Etta used to talk about gardening whenever we came in to cash my pension checks years ago. He looked terrified. His face was white as a sheet and he was sweating. He ran past the teller line and pushed the security guard away from me. "Do not touch him," Mr. Thornton yelled, his voice cracking. "Do you have any idea who this is?" He looked at Justin, who was still cowering behind the glass. Turn that alarm off. Override code Alpha 7, now. Justin fumbled with the keyboard and the siren finally stopped, leaving a ringing silence in the lobby. Mr. Thornton turned to me. He took my hand in both of his. His hands were shaking more than mine. "Mr. Hayes," he said, breathless, "I am so sorry. Please, come with me to the vault. We cannot talk out here. It is not safe. Not safe." The words echoed in my head. I followed him past the staring customers, past the terrified teller, and into the heavy steel door of the private offices. Mr. Thornton led me to a large conference room with a mahogany table. He poured me a glass of water, but he spilled half of it on the table, because he was trembling so much. "Mr. Hayes," he said, sitting down opposite me, "I need you to breathe. We have a situation." When that teller scanned the account number, it triggered a silent alert to the Federal Reserve and my private terminal. That is a level 1 account. I took a sip of water. My heart was starting to slow down, but my confusion was growing. "Level 1, I asked. "Does that mean I owe money? Is the $50 gone?" Mr. Thornton looked at me with a strange expression. It was a mix of pity and awe. $50, he whispered. Mr. Hayes, Etta did not just deposit $50. She was a genius, an absolute financial genius. He opened a file folder on the table. In 1982, Etta used that $50 to buy penny stocks in a small computer firm in California. She kept reinvesting the dividends. In 1990, she bought 10 acres of swampland on the east side of town for almost nothing. That land is now the Oakwood shopping mall. She leased it out. She never sold it. She put every cent of rent back into the market. High-risk, high-reward tech stocks. Pharmaceutical startups. She had an eye for value that Wall Street brokers would kill for. I sat back in my chair. Etta. My Etta who clipped coupons for detergent. My Etta who darned my socks so we would not have to buy new ones. How much, I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. Mr. Thornton took a deep breath. He turned his computer monitor around so I could see it. The number was so long it had 2 commas. As of this morning, with the interest compounded daily, the balance of the Etta Hayes Trust is $18,400,000.62. The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling off my chair. 18 million. We had eaten beans and rice for dinner 3 nights a week. We drove a car with a broken heater for 5 years. She had $18 million, and she never said a word. Why, I asked, tears streaming down my face. Why did she let us live like we were poor? Mr. Thornton pulled a sealed envelope from the file. Because of this, he said, "This is the trust agreement Etta signed 10 years ago. It has a very specific activation clause. She told me that she knew you. She knew you were a proud man who wanted to provide for his family with your own hands. She did not want the money to make you lazy or make you feel small, but she also knew your children." He slid the document toward me. The clause states that these funds are to remain frozen in secret until 2 conditions are met. First, Etta Hayes must be deceased. Second, Virgil Hayes must present the original passbook to the bank in a state of distress, indicating that he has been abandoned or mistreated by his beneficiaries. Mr. Thornton looked me in the eye. She told me once that if Kendra ever found this book and she loved you, she would frame it or keep it safe. But if she threw it away like trash, it meant she did not care about the past, and she definitely did not care about you. Etta set a trap, Mr. Hayes, and your daughter just walked right into it. The money is yours, all of it. And according to this document, you have the power to cut everyone else off without a single dime. The walk back from the bank felt different than the walk there. The pavement was the same cracked concrete I had walked on for 30 years. The neighbors' houses were still the same peeling paint and overgrown lawns, but the world had shifted beneath my feet. In my inside pocket, resting against my chest, was the passbook that proved I was not a burden. I was a king in disguise, but a king must sometimes wear the rags of a beggar to see who his true subjects are. As I turned the corner onto my street, my heart hammered against my ribs, not from the exertion, but from the sight that awaited me. My front porch, the place where Etta used to sit and snap peas in the summer, was covered in black plastic garbage bags. There were 6 of them. They were piled haphazardly, blocking the front door. A cardboard box with my winter boots sat on top of the railing, soaking up the moisture from the humid afternoon air. They had not just packed my things. They had thrown them out like refuse, waiting for the sanitation truck. I walked up the driveway, my steps heavy and deliberate. Derek was sitting on the hood of his leased BMW, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. He did not look guilty. He looked annoyed that I had returned at all. "Took you long enough, Virgil," he said, sliding off the car. We were about to call the sheriff to come find you. We thought you wandered off into traffic. I looked at the bags. Is this everything? I asked. My voice was low. I kept my hand over my pocket, protecting the secret that would destroy him. It is the essentials, Derek said, waving a hand dismissively. Clothes, toiletries, that old radio you listen to. Everything else goes with the house sale. We cannot have clutter where we are going. Where are we going? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Derek reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was already damp from the humidity. He smoothed it out against the hood of the car. It was a brochure for a facility called the Last Stop Rest Home. Even the name sounded like a threat. I found you a bed, he said. It is affordable. They take your state pension and Social Security, and that covers everything. Shared room, 2 meals a day. And they have a bus that takes you to the mall once a month. It is a great deal, Virgil. You will be with your own kind. I looked at the paper. I knew this place. It was on the other side of the tracks near the chemical plant. It was where people went to be forgotten. The walls peeled and the hallways smelled of bleach and despair. This was what my life of hard work amounted to in his eyes. A cot in a shared room next to a factory. You cannot do this, I said, feigning the tremor in my voice. This is my house. My name is on the deed. Not for long. Derek sneered. He pulled a pen from his shirt pocket. He clicked it open. The sound was sharp, like a pistol hammer being cocked. We have power of attorney, remember. You are mentally incompetent, Virgil. You talk to your dead wife. You wander off to banks to look for imaginary money. We are doing this for your safety. Now sign the admission form. The van from the home will be here in 20 minutes. If you do not sign voluntarily, I will have them sedate you and drag you out. Do you want the neighbors to see that? He thrust the paper and pen at me. I looked at the form. It was a voluntary admission and a transfer of residency rights. It was the document that would legally strip me of my freedom if I signed it correctly. I looked at the house. I saw Kendra standing in the window. She was holding a glass of wine watching us. She did not come out. She let her husband handle the dirty work. She was my flesh and blood, and she was watching her father be evicted like a stray dog. I took the pen. My hand shook, but not from fear. It shook from the effort it took not to smash his teeth in right there on the driveway. I needed to buy time. I needed them to think they had won so they would lower their guards. Okay, I whispered. I will go. I do not want any trouble. Good choice, old man, Derek said, smiling. Sign at the bottom. Press hard. It is a carbon copy. I leaned over the hood of the car. The metal was warm under my hand. I looked at the signature line. Virgil T. Hayes, that was my name. Virgil Thomas Hayes. But as the pen touched the paper, I made a decision. I did not write Thomas. I wrote Timothy. A small, subtle change in the middle initial and the spelling of the middle name. To a casual observer, it looked like my messy handwriting. To a court of law, it was an invalid signature on a legal document. I signed Virgil Timothy Hayes with a flourish. There, I said, capping the pen. Derek snatched the paper away without even looking at the signature. He was too eager. He was too greedy to check the details. That would be his undoing. Perfect, he said. The van is coming. Wait here on the porch with your trash bags. I am not waiting for the van, I said. I picked up 2 of the black bags. The rest I will send for. Derek laughed. Send for? With what money? Whatever, Virgil. Just get off the property. I have a contractor coming in an hour to rip out those ugly cabinets Etta loved so much. The mention of the cabinets stung, but I swallowed the pain. I threw one bag over my shoulder and grabbed the other. I turned my back on the house I had built. I turned my back on the daughter I had raised. I started walking down the street. The sky finally opened up and the rain began to fall. It was a cold, gray rain that soaked through my suit jacket in seconds. I heard the front door open and close. I knew they were watching me leave. A pathetic old man carrying his life in garbage bags walking into the storm. I walked for 3 blocks until I was out of their sight. The rain mixed with the tears I refused to wipe away. I walked until I reached the corner of Main Street where the old payphone used to be. Now it was just a bus stop. But I did not wait for the bus. I raised my hand and hailed a passing taxi. The driver looked at my wet clothes and the garbage bags with suspicion. He slowed down but did not unlock the door. I have cash, I yelled over the sound of the rain. He unlocked the door. I threw the bags in the back seat and climbed in. The warmth of the heater wrapped around me. Where to? the driver asked, eyeing me in the rearview mirror. Take me to the Regency, I said. The driver laughed. The Regency Hotel downtown. Buddy, that place is $400 a night. You sure you do not want the Motel 6? Drive, I said. My voice was not the voice of the old man on the porch. It was the voice of a man with $18 million. The driver shut up and drove. 30 minutes later, the taxi pulled up under the golden awning of the Regency. The doorman in a pristine uniform hesitated when he saw me step out. He looked at the garbage bags in my hand. Sir, deliveries are in the back, he said, stepping forward to block my path. I reached into my wet jacket pocket. Mr. Thornton, the bank director, had given me an envelope of cash and a temporary platinum debit card linked to the trust before I left the bank. I pulled out a $100 bill and pressed it into the doorman's gloved hand. These are not deliveries, I said. These are my luggage. Take them to the presidential suite. The doorman looked at the bill, then at my face. He saw something in my eyes that made him step back. Yes, sir. Right away, sir, he said, signaling a bellboy. I walked into the lobby. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. The floor was marble, so polished I could see my reflection. I looked like a drowned rat, but I walked with my head high. I went to the front desk. The receptionist, a young woman with a kind face, looked concerned. Sir, are you okay? She asked. Do you need medical assistance? I need a room, I said. The best one you have, for a month, and I need a tailor sent up. I have nothing to wear but what is on my back. I placed the platinum card on the counter. The woman picked it up. She typed something into her computer. Her eyes went wide. She looked at me with new respect. Of course, Mr. Hayes. We have the executive suite available on the top floor. It has a view of the entire city. I will have room service bring up a hot meal, and I will call the tailor immediately. Thank you, I said. And one more thing. I need a secure phone line. Up in the room, I stripped off the wet funeral suit. I stood under the hot water of the massive marble shower, washing away the smell of the rain and the humiliation of the porch. I scrubbed until my skin was red. I was washing away the victim. I wrapped myself in a thick white robe that smelled of lavender. I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights were flickering on. Somewhere down there in the dark, Derek and Kendra were celebrating their victory. They were probably drinking Etta's good wine. I picked up the heavy phone on the nightstand. I dialed the number Mr. Thornton had written down for me. It was the number of a private investigator named Vance. He was expensive and he was ruthless. Vance Investigations, a gravelly voice answered. This is Virgil Hayes, I said. I was referred by Thornton. I need you to find out everything about my son-in-law, Derek. I need to know who he owes money to. I need to know why he is so desperate to sell my house that he would throw me out on the street. I can do that, Vance said. But it will cost you. Money is not an object, I said. Just get me the dirt. I hung up. I ate the steak dinner room service brought me. It was the first time I had eaten steak in 5 years. Etta always said it was too expensive. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite. 2 hours later, the phone rang. It was Vance. That was fast, I said. It was easy, Vance replied. His voice sounded tight. Mr. Hayes, you need to listen to me carefully. Your son-in-law is not just bad with money, he is in deep with the Albanian mob. He owes them $2 million from illegal gambling and a failed development deal. The deadline for payment is next week. I gripped the phone. $2 million. Yeah, Vance continued. And the word on the street is that if he does not pay, they are not going to break his legs. They are going to put him in a concrete foundation. That is why he needs to sell your house. It is his only asset. He already leveraged everything else. I looked out the window at the rain-lashed city. It all made sense now. The desperation, the cruelty, the rush. Derek was a drowning man trying to use my life as a life raft. Is there anything else, I asked? One more thing, Vance said. He put the house up as collateral for the juice loan. If he does not pay, they do not just come for him. They come for the house. They come for the deed. I hung up the phone. A cold smile spread across my face. Derek had sold his soul to the devil, but he had forgotten one thing. The devil needs a signature to collect, and the signature he had on that admission form was worthless. And the signature he needed for the house deed was sitting in a 5-star hotel room backed by $18 million. Derek wanted a war. He wanted to play the big shot. Well, he was about to find out that the quiet steelworker he threw in the trash was the one holding the sledgehammer, and I was ready to swing, while I was sitting in the climate-controlled comfort of the presidential suite looking out at the rain that battered the city below. My son-in-law was walking into a nightmare of his own making. I know exactly what happened because Vance, my private investigator, had bugged Derek's phone and had a man sitting in the lobby of the title company. The report I received later that night was more satisfying than any meal I had ever eaten. Derek walked into the offices of Prestige Title at 2 in the afternoon. He was wearing his best suit, but he looked like a man walking to the gallows. Waiting for him in the conference room was not a nice young couple looking for a starter home. It was a man named Mr. S. Vance told me Mr. S. was a frontman for the Albanian syndicate that Derek had borrowed money from. He was a thick man with a neck like a bull, and he had brought a briefcase filled with $500,000 in cash. This was the down payment Derek needed to keep his kneecaps intact for another month. Derek sat down sweating even though the air conditioning was on full blast. He smiled that fake salesperson smile of his. "Gentlemen," he said, rubbing his hands together, "we are ready to make history. The house is a prime asset. My father-in-law has vacated the premises and the power of attorney is signed. We can close this today." Mr. S. did not smile. He just stared at Derek with dead eyes and tapped his finger on the mahogany table. "I want the deed," he said. His voice was like gravel in a cement mixer. "I give you cash, you give me paper. That is how we work." The notary, a woman named Mrs. Gable, adjusted her glasses and opened the file folder. She looked confused. She flipped through the pages once and then a second time. Derek tapped his foot impatiently. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Gable?" he asked. "We are on a tight schedule here." Mrs. Gable looked up. "Mr. Hayes," she said, addressing Derek by his married name, "I have the power of attorney document you provided. It appears to give you authority over Virgil Hayes's personal decisions." Derek nodded eagerly. "Exactly. He is incompetent. I am his guardian, so just stamp the papers." Mrs. Gable shook her head. "That is the problem, sir. Virgil Hayes does not own the property at 42 Maple Street." Derek froze. "What do you mean he does not own it? He has lived there for 40 years. I have seen the tax bills." Mrs. Gable turned the computer screen around. "According to the county recorder, the deed was transferred yesterday morning. The property is now held by the Etta Hayes Memorial Trust. The power of attorney you have allows you to manage Virgil's personal accounts, but it does not give you any authority over the trust. To sell this house, you do not need Virgil's signature as an individual. You need the signature of the trust's sole trustee." The room went silent. The only sound was the rain hitting the window. Derek felt the blood drain from his face. "Who is the trustee?" he whispered. Mrs. Gable looked at the screen again. "The trustee is Mr. Virgil Hayes, and the trust documents explicitly state that no asset can be sold without his direct in-person authorization. Your power of attorney is useless here." Mr. S. stopped tapping his finger. He slowly closed the briefcase with a loud click. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. He stood up. "You told me you had the house," he said. "You told me the old man was handled." Derek stammered, trying to find words. "There must be a mistake. The system is slow. My mother-in-law died last week. She could not have set up a trust." Mrs. Gable looked at him with pity. "The trust was established in 1995, sir. It was only activated yesterday when the death certificate was filed. The house has always been protected. You just never checked." Mr. S. leaned across the table. He grabbed Derek by his silk tie and pulled him close. "You have 24 hours, he whispered. "You bring me the deed or you bring me my $2 million plus interest. If you do not, I will take something else. I hear you use your hands to type contracts. It would be a shame if you could never type again." He let go of the tie and walked out of the room, taking the briefcase of cash with him. Derek slumped in his chair, gasping for air. He was not just broke. He was a dead man walking. 5 miles away in my hotel room, my phone began to ring. It was Derek. I let it ring. I picked up a grape from the fruit basket and popped it into my mouth. The phone rang again and again. Then a text message popped up. "Dad, where are you? We need to talk. It is urgent. Please pick up." I swiped the notification away and took a sip of iced tea. For the first time in my life, I held all the cards. Derek was panicking. He was realizing that the old man he had treated like garbage was actually the gatekeeper to his survival. He needed my signature. He needed me to sign over the trust. But he did not know about the trust yet, not really. He just knew he needed me. And he had no idea where I was. Back at the title company, Derek was trembling so hard he could barely hold his phone. He dialed Kendra. Pick up, he screamed at his voicemail. When she finally answered, she sounded annoyed. "What is it, Derek? I am at the spa. Did the sale go through?" Derek ran out of the building into the pouring rain. "No," he screamed. "The sale is dead. The old man screwed us. He put the house in a trust. We need him, Kendra. We need to find him right now or I am dead. Do you understand me?" Mr. S. gave me 24 hours. Kendra went silent. "But we kicked him out," she said, her voice losing its arrogance. "We sent him to the shelter or something. We do not even know where he is." Derek got into his car, slamming the door. "I do not care. We have to find him. Get in the car. We are going hunting." The hunt began in the pouring rain. Derek picked up Kendra and they drove to the address on the brochure he had thrown at me. The last stop, rest home. It was a grim building with barred windows and peeling paint. They ran inside, demanding to see Virgil Hayes. The nurse at the desk looked at them like they were crazy. "We have no admission for a Virgil Hayes," she said, chewing gum. "We had a reservation, but he never showed up." Kendra stomped her foot. "He has to be here. He has nowhere else to go. He is an old man with no money." The nurse shrugged. "Maybe he is under a bridge. Look around outside." They drove through the neighborhoods they had spent their lives avoiding. They drove past the homeless encampments under the highway overpass. Derek slowed the BMW down, rolling down the window to shout at strangers. "Hey, have you seen a black man in a gray suit? About 70. Looks confused." The people on the street just stared at him or cursed him out. The rain was coming down harder, turning the streets into rivers of oil and mud. Inside the car, the tension was toxic. "You said he would just sign and leave," Kendra screamed at Derek. "You said you handled it. Now we are going to lose everything because you could not manage one stupid old man." Derek slammed his hand on the steering wheel. "Shut up, Kendra. Just shut up. If you had found that passbook sooner, we would have known about the trust. This is your fault, too. You treated him like dirt, so he hid things from us." They checked the bus station. They checked the soup kitchen. They even checked the park bench where the local drunks gathered. Nothing. Virgil Hayes had vanished. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the wet city. Every minute that ticked by was a minute closer to Mr. S coming for Derek's fingers. They were driving in circles, their expensive car looking out of place in the poverty-stricken streets. "He is gone," Kendra whispered, staring out the window at the dark alleyways. "He is probably dead in a ditch somewhere. And he took the house with him." Derek pulled the car over to the curb. He put his head on the steering wheel and began to sob. It was the sound of a man who realized too late that he had thrown away the only life preserver he had. He did not cry for me. He cried for himself. He cried for his money. And up in the tower overlooking the city, I watched the rain fall and prepared for the next act. They thought I was lost, but I had never been more found. The game of hide-and-seek was over. Now it was time for the game of cat and mouse. And for the first time in 40 years, the mouse had claws. The morning sun bounced off the glass facade of Derek's real estate office like a spotlight on a stage. It was a stage I had built in my mind, and today was opening night. I stood across the street checking my reflection in a shop window. The man staring back at me was not the millionaire with a suite at the Regency. He was a ghost. I was wearing an old flannel shirt I had bought at a thrift store for $2. It was stained with coffee and smelled of mothballs. My pants were torn at the knee, and I had rubbed a little charcoal from a burnt cork on my cheek to look like I had been sleeping near a fire. I had not shaved in 3 days. To the world, I was just another piece of debris washed up by the economic tide. But under the collar of that filthy shirt was a tiny black button. It was not a button at all. It was a high-definition camera with a microphone that Vance, the private investigator, had pinned there an hour ago. I took a deep breath and shuffled across the street. I did not walk with my usual steady gait. I dragged my left leg, slightly mimicking an old injury, acting every bit the broken man they wanted me to be. I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the agency. The air inside smelled of expensive cologne and ambition. A receptionist with perfect teeth looked up, and her smile vanished instantly. "Sir, you cannot be in here," she chirped, reaching for the phone. I ignored her. I saw them. Derek was in the main conference room. The walls were glass so I could see everything. He was sitting with 2 men in expensive suits. They looked like investors. Big money. Kendra was there too, standing by a flip chart pointing at graphs that probably promised returns they could never deliver. This was it. The perfect audience. I pushed open the conference room door. It swung wide with a loud thud. Everyone froze. Derek stopped mid-sentence, his hand hovering in the air. Kendra dropped her laser pointer. "Derek," I wailed. My voice was loud, cracking with exaggerated desperation. "Derek, please, son, I am so hungry." Derek turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He stood up, knocking his chair over. "Virgil," he hissed. "What are you doing here? Get out!" I stumbled forward, grabbing the edge of the mahogany table with my dirty hands, leaving a smudge on the polished surface. The two investors pulled back in their chairs, looking at me with disgust, and then at Derek with suspicion. They kicked me out of the shelter. "Derek," I cried, "I have not eaten in 2 days. Please, son, just $10. Just give me $10 for a sandwich. I know you have it. You sold my house. You must have $10 for your old dad." The room went deadly silent. The investors exchanged a look. One of them cleared his throat. "Is this your father, Derek?" the man asked. Derek tried to laugh, but it came out as a choke. "No, I mean yes, but he is unwell. He has dementia. He does not know what he is saying." "I am not crazy," I shouted, letting a tear run down my cheek. "I am just hungry. You took my pension checks, Derek. You took my home. Kendra, baby, please. Do you have $1? Just $1 for your daddy." Kendra looked like she wanted to vomit. She did not look at me with pity. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. She walked over to the investors, forcing a smile that looked like a rictus of pain. "Gentlemen, why do we not take a break? There is a coffee shop next door. My husband will handle this domestic issue." As the investors filed out, eyeing me like I was a contagious disease, I saw the fear in Derek's eyes. He was losing control. He was losing face. And when a narcissist loses face, they get dangerous. That was exactly what I needed. Once the investors were out of sight, the air in the room changed instantly. It went from embarrassing to violent. Derek grabbed my arm. His grip was not gentle. He dug his fingers into my bicep hard enough to bruise. "You stupid old fool," he growled. "You just cost me $1 million deal." He did not lead me out the front door. He dragged me toward the back of the office. We went through a narrow hallway past the break room and into a supply closet filled with boxes of printer paper and cleaning supplies. He threw me inside. I stumbled and fell onto a stack of boxes, letting out a groan of pain that I did not have to fake. My hip hit the concrete floor hard. Derek kicked the door shut and locked it. The room was small, dim, and smelled of ozone and floor wax. He loomed over me, his face twisted into a mask of rage. He was sweating and his eyes were wild. "Where have you been?" he screamed. "We have been looking everywhere for you. Do you have any idea the trouble you have caused?" I sat up, rubbing my hip. I was scared I admitted that to myself. He was younger, stronger, and desperate. But I kept my chest angled toward him, making sure the camera lens had a clear view. "I just wanted to go home, Derek," I whimpered. "Why did you change the locks?" "Shut up," Derek yelled. He reached down and grabbed the lapels of my dirty flannel shirt, hauling me to my feet. He slammed me against the metal shelving unit. Cans of air freshener rattled and fell to the floor. "There is no home," he spat in my face. "The house is gone, or it will be as soon as you fix the mess you made." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled document. It was a quitclaim deed transferring the trust assets to him. "You are going to sign this," he said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "You are going to sign this right now. You are going to sign over the trust, the house, and every cent you have hidden away. And if you do not, I swear to God, Virgil, I will make sure you end up in a state ward where they tie you to the bed and feed you through a tube." I looked over his shoulder. The door opened and Kendra slipped in. She did not look horrified. She did not rush to save me. She stood there, crossing her arms over her chest, looking at me with cold, dead eyes. "Just sign it, Dad," she said flatly. "Stop being dramatic, Kendra." I pleaded, looking directly at her. "He is hurting me. Look at him. He is hurting your father. He is doing what he has to do," Kendra said. Her voice was ice. "You ruined our lives, Dad, hiding that money, making us struggle while you sat on a fortune. You deserve this. You are selfish." "Selfish?" I asked. "I worked in a steel mill for 40 years to feed you." "And what do you have to show for it?" Kendra interrupted. "A dirty shirt and a bad attitude. Sign the paper. Dad, sign it, and we will give you the $10 you begged for. We will even buy you a bus ticket to Florida. But if you do not sign it..." She let the sentence hang in the air. Derek shook me again. His hand raised up and he slapped me across the face. It was a sharp, stinging blow that knocked my head to the side. My glasses flew off and skittered across the floor. "Sign it!" he screamed, raising his hand again. I tasted blood in my mouth. I had what I needed. The camera had seen the assault. The microphone had recorded the threat. The trap was sprung. "I cannot sign it," I wheezed. "My hands are shaking too much. I need to sit down. I need my glasses." Derek shoved me back down onto the boxes. He threw the paper and a pen at me. "You sit here," he said, breathing hard. "You sit here and you think about your future. We have to go smooth things over with the investors. When we come back, that paper better have your signature on it. Or I promise you the next time I hit you, I will not stop at a slap." Kendra looked at me one last time. There was no love in her eyes. There was only greed. "Sign it, Dad," she said. "Sign it and then go die somewhere quiet. We are done with you." They turned and walked out, slamming the door and locking it from the outside. I heard their footsteps fading down the hallway. I heard Derek cursing and Kendra telling him to fix his tie. I sat there in the dark supply closet for a long moment. My cheek throbbed where he had hit me. My hip ached. I felt old and tired. But then I reached up and touched the button on my collar. I pressed it once to stop the recording. A tiny red light blinked once and then went out. I stood up. I found my glasses on the floor. One lens was cracked, but I could still see. I picked up the quitclaim deed they had demanded I sign. I folded it neatly and put it in my pocket. It was evidence. I walked to the back door of the supply closet. They had locked the door leading to the office, but they had forgotten that this room also had a service exit leading to the alleyway for deliveries. I pushed the crash bar. The door opened into the cool, rainy afternoon. I stepped out into the alley. I was bruised. I was bleeding from a cut on my lip. I looked like a victim. But as I walked toward the street where Vance was waiting in his car, I began to smile. It was a grim, bloody smile, but it was real. They thought they had broken me. They thought they had left a helpless old man locked in the dark to contemplate his defeat. They did not know that I was walking out with a digital noose around their necks. I climbed into the passenger seat of Vance's car. Vance looked at my face and his knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. "Did they do that to you?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. I nodded, dabbing my lip with a handkerchief. "Did you get it?" he asked. I tapped the button on my collar. Every word I said, every threat, every hit. It is all here, Vance, including the part where my daughter told me to sign and die. Vance started the engine. "Where to Mr. Hayes?" "The police station." "No," I said, looking back at the office building. "Not yet. The police are for later. First, I want to make them hurt where it counts. I want to take away the one thing they love more than themselves. Drive me to the bank, Vance. I have a debt to buy." As we pulled away, I watched Derek and Kendra come out the front door of the office, bowing and scraping to the investors trying to salvage their deal. They looked so confident. They looked so sure that they were in control. They had no idea that the ground beneath them had already crumbled. The storm was not coming. I was the storm, and I was just getting started. I sat in the leather chair of the private bank office watching Mr. Thornton type the final commands into his computer. The air in the room was cool and smelled of old money and floor wax, but my blood was running hot. I was about to spend $2 million. To most people, that is a fortune. To me, it was the price of a weapon. Mr. Thornton looked up from his screen, his face pale. "Are you sure about this, Virgil?" he asked. "You are buying a toxic asset. This debt is bad. You will never see a penny of return on this investment." I leaned forward, resting my calloused hands on the polished mahogany table. "I am not looking for a return on investment, Mr. Thornton," I said. "I am looking for a return on justice. The men holding this debt are dangerous. If Derek does not pay, they will hurt him. I do not want him hurt physically. I want him broken mentally. I want him to feel the walls closing in on him, not because of a threat of violence, but because of the weight of his own greed. Buy the debt. Buy it all. Every cent he owes the syndicate, and transfer the holding rights to that shell company we set up. VH Capital." Mr. Thornton pressed the enter key. The transaction was instantaneous. Somewhere in the city, a group of dangerous men received a wire transfer that settled their books, and they walked away happy. And somewhere else in the city, my son-in-law Derek was taking a breath of relief, thinking he had dodged a bullet. He had no idea that he had just stepped onto a landmine. Now I was his creditor. I owned his mortgage. I owned his car loans. I owned the shirt on his back. And unlike the syndicate, I was not interested in cash. I was interested in payment of a different kind. 2 hours later, Derek was sitting in his office trying to salvage the wreckage of his day. I know this because Vance had tapped into the office security system and I was watching the feed on a tablet in my hotel room. Derek looked terrible. His tie was loose, his hair was messy, and he was pouring a drink from a crystal decanter that he could no longer afford. His phone rang. It was not the ringtone assigned to his wife. It was the generic ring of an unknown number. He picked it up hesitantly. "Hello," Derek said, his voice shaking. "Mr. Derek Bishop," a voice on the other end said. "This is Mr. Stein from VH Capital. We are the new holders of your debt obligations previously managed by Mr. S. and his associates. We have acquired your entire portfolio." I watched Derek slump into his chair. He let out a laugh that sounded like a sob. "Oh, thank God," he said. "Thank God. Look, Mr. Stein, you guys are lifesavers. I was having some cash flow issues with the previous owners. They were very aggressive. I assume since you bought the debt, we can work out a new payment plan. Maybe interest only for 6 months until I close a big deal next week." I watched him lean back, putting his feet up on the desk, regaining his arrogance. He thought VH Capital was just another bank he could charm and manipulate. Mr. Stein did not laugh. His voice was cold and precise, just as I had instructed him to be. "I am afraid you misunderstand the situation, Mr. Bishop. We did not acquire this debt to restructure it. We acquired it to liquidate it. We have reviewed your financials and your credit standing. You are insolvent. We are calling the note due. Immediately." Derek dropped his feet from the desk. "What?" he stammered. "You cannot do that. That is $2 million. Nobody has that kind of cash sitting around. I need 30 days. You have 0 days," Mr. Stein replied. The terms of the original loan stated that upon transfer, the new holder reserves the right to demand full payment if the borrower is deemed high risk. You are high risk, Mr. Bishop. You have 24 hours to wire the full amount. If you fail to do so, we will begin immediate seizure of all collateral assets listed in the agreement. That includes your primary residence, your vehicles, and your wife's jewelry. Derek stood up screaming into the phone. "You cannot take my house. My wife is in that house. This is illegal. I will sue you." "You can try," Mr. Stein said calmly, "but our lawyers are already filing the paperwork. And Mr. Bishop, one more thing. We have frozen your credit lines effective immediately to prevent further loss. Have a nice day." The line went dead. I watched Derek smash his phone onto the desk. He paced the room like a caged animal. He did not know that the man destroying his life was the same man he had locked in a supply closet 3 hours ago. He grabbed his coat and ran out of the office. He was going to find Kendra. He was going to try and spend whatever money he had left before the freeze hit. That evening, I put on a fresh suit and took a taxi to Le Jardin, the most expensive French restaurant in the city. I did not go inside. I parked across the street and waited. Vance had told me that Derek and Kendra had a reservation there at 8 o'clock. It was their ritual. No matter how bad things got, they always went to dinner to be seen by the right people. They believed that looking rich was the same thing as being rich. I saw the black Porsche pull up to the valet stand. It was gleaming under the streetlights. Derek threw the keys to the valet with a dismissive wave. Kendra stepped out wearing a red dress that was too tight and diamonds that I now owned. They walked into the restaurant, heads held high, pretending they were the kings of the city. They were eating steak and lobster on credit that no longer existed. I waited. 30 minutes passed. Then I saw the tow truck turn the corner. It was not a normal tow truck. It was a heavy-duty flatbed with flashing yellow lights. It pulled up right in front of the restaurant entrance, blocking the view of the patio. 2 large men in jumpsuits jumped out. They did not talk to the valet. They walked straight to the Porsche. The valet tried to stop them, waving his arms, but one of the men showed him a clipboard with a repossession order. The valet backed off. He knew better than to argue with the repo men. Inside the restaurant, the scene was unfolding just as I had planned. I could see through the large bay windows. The manager walked up to Derek's table. He was holding a credit card machine. He whispered something to Derek. Derek laughed and handed him another card. The manager swiped it. He shook his head. Derek's face went red. He pulled out another card, then another. He emptied his wallet onto the white tablecloth. Every single card was declined. The kill switch from VH Capital had propagated through the banking system. At that moment, the sound of the tow truck winch whirring into action cut through the ambient noise of the street. It was a loud, grinding, mechanical sound. Guests inside the restaurant turned to look out the window. Derek looked too. He saw his beloved Porsche being hoisted into the air at a 45-degree angle. It hung there like a dead fish on a hook. Derek jumped up, knocking his chair over. He ran toward the door with a napkin still tucked into his shirt collar. Kendra followed him, stumbling in her high heels. They burst out onto the sidewalk. "Stop!" Derek screamed, running toward the truck. "What are you doing? That is my car. Put it down." The driver did not even look at him. He was securing the chains around the axle. "Repossession order," he grunted. "Payments are in default. Step back, sir, or I will call the police." "Default," Derek yelled. "I paid the lease this month. This is a mistake." "Do you know who I am?" The driver looked at him. "Yeah, I know who you are. You are the guy losing his car. Now step back." A crowd had gathered. People leaving the restaurant were watching. Passers-by were taking videos with their phones. Kendra stood on the sidewalk, covering her face with her hands. This was her worst nightmare. Not poverty, but embarrassment. "Hey, look over there," someone in the crowd shouted. "They are taking the other one too." Derek spun around. A second tow truck had pulled up behind the first one. It was hooking up Kendra's white Mercedes convertible. "No," Kendra shrieked. "Not my car. Derek, do something." Derek stood there helpless in the middle of the street. He looked from the Porsche to the Mercedes and then back at the restaurant where the manager was standing in the doorway holding the unpaid bill and looking ready to call the cops for theft of services. I rolled down the window of the taxi just an inch. I watched my son-in-law, who had called me a beggar, standing on the curb with nothing. He had no car to drive away in. He had no money to pay for his dinner. He had no dignity left to protect. I tapped the driver on the shoulder. "Take me back to the hotel," I said. As we drove away, I did not feel joy. Revenge is not joyful. It is heavy, but it is necessary. I was stripping them down layer by layer. First the pride, then the toys. Next would be the shelter. I was teaching them the lesson Etta had tried to teach them for years. You cannot build a life on a foundation of lies. And when the foundation cracks, the whole house comes down. Tonight, the roof had just blown off, and the storm was still raging. The chandeliers of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel shimmered like frozen fireworks above the heads of the city's elite. I stood in the shadows of the mezzanine level, leaning against a marble pillar and looking down at the entrance. I was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than the house I grew up in. It was midnight blue, tailored to fit my broad shoulders perfectly, and on my wrist sat a watch that whispered wealth rather than screamed it. But tonight I was not just a guest. I was the predator waiting for the prey to walk into the trap. Vance had told me they would be here. After the towing of their cars and the freezing of their credit cards, Derek and Kendra were desperate. They needed a lifeline, and the charity gala for the Children's Hospital was the only place left where they could hunt for a savior. I watched through the glass doors as a yellow taxi pulled up to the valet stand. It was a humiliating arrival for a couple who used to sneer at anything less than a Mercedes. I saw Derek pay the driver with crumpled cash he had dug out of his pockets. He stepped out onto the red carpet looking like a man holding his breath. He was wearing a tuxedo that did not quite fit him. The sleeves were a fraction too short, and the jacket was tight around the waist. It was borrowed. I knew this because Vance had tracked him to a rental shop on the west side 3 hours ago. Kendra stepped out after him. She was wearing a stunning silver gown, but I recognized it. It was from 3 seasons ago, a dress she had almost thrown away because she said it made her look old. Tonight, it was her armor. They walked into the ballroom with their heads held high, but their eyes were darting around the room with frantic energy. They were scanning the crowd for easy marks. They were looking for investors. They were looking for old friends they had not yet alienated. They were looking for anyone who could write a check to stop the bleeding. I watched them grab glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and down them in one gulp, liquid courage. They began to work the room. I saw Derek approach Mr. Henderson, a local developer. Henderson turned his back on him after 2 sentences. Word travels fast in this town. When your credit freezes, the temperature in the room drops whenever you walk in. I decided it was time to descend. I walked down the grand staircase, my hand resting lightly on the velvet railing. I did not rush. I let the crowd part for me. I was the mystery man of the evening, the anonymous donor who had pledged $5 million to the new pediatric wing. Only the hospital director knew who I was. To everyone else, I was just a powerful presence they wanted to know. I reached the bottom of the stairs just as Kendra and Derek were retreating from another rejection. They turned and saw me. For a second, they did not recognize me. They saw the tuxedo. They saw the posture. They saw the man I was before the world beat me down. But then they saw the face. The recognition hit them like a physical blow. Kendra dropped her empty champagne flute. It shattered on the floor, but the sound was swallowed by the chatter of the party. Derek grabbed her arm, his eyes bulging. "What is he doing here?" Derek hissed. "How did he get in?" They did not see a millionaire. Their minds could not process that image. They saw the bum from the office. They saw the old man who had begged for $10 yesterday. They assumed I had snuck in through the kitchen to embarrass them or to beg from their rich friends. Kendra's face twisted into a mask of pure venom. The stress of the last 24 hours, the repossession of the cars, the fear of the mob, and the humiliation of the taxi ride all boiled over. She needed someone to hurt, and I was her favorite punching bag. She marched toward me, her silver dress swishing aggressively. Derek followed close behind, ready to play the heavy. "You," she screeched, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. "What do you think you are doing?" The conversation nearby stopped. People turned to look. Kendra did not care. She wanted a scene. She wanted to prove to everyone that she was part of the elite and I was the dirt on her shoe. "Get out of here, Dad," she yelled loud enough for the band to stop playing. "You are drunk. You are embarrassing me. How did you even get past security? Did you steal that suit?" I stood perfectly still. I looked at her with a calmness that infuriated her. "Hello, Kendra," I said softly. "You look lovely tonight." "Don't you talk to me," she screamed. She turned to the crowd playing the victim. "I am so sorry, everyone. This is my father. He is mentally unstable. He has been stalking us. He thinks he is a millionaire, but he is homeless." She turned to a large man in a security uniform standing near the entrance. "You there, security. Get this man out of here. He is trespassing. He is disturbing the guests. Throw him in the alley where he belongs." Derek stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Yeah, get him out. He is dangerous. He threatened us. Remove him now or we will sue this hotel." The room was deadly silent. 300 of the city's wealthiest people were watching. This was the moment Kendra had been waiting for. The moment she could exert her power and cast me out. She stood there pointing at the door, a triumphant sneer on her lips. The head of security, a man named Marcus, walked over. He was 6 feet 4 inches of muscle. He looked at Kendra. He looked at Derek. Then he looked at me. He did not reach for his radio. He did not grab my arm. Marcus bowed. It was a deep, respectful bow from the waist. "Good evening, Mr. Chairman," Marcus said, his voice booming in the quiet hall. "Is there a problem here?" Kendra's jaw dropped. Derek looked like he had been slapped with a wet fish. Chairman Kendra whispered, "What are you talking about? He is a bum. Arrest him." Marcus straightened up and looked at Kendra with cold eyes. "Ma'am, you are speaking to Mr. Virgil Hayes. He is the honorary chairman of tonight's gala and the primary benefactor of the new hospital wing. He owns the building we are standing in. If anyone is being removed, it will not be him." A murmur went through the crowd. I saw the hospital director, Mr. Sterling, running toward the stage. He grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," Mr. Sterling said, breathless. "I apologize for the interruption, but since the cat is out of the bag, let me formally introduce the man who made tonight possible. The man who donated $5 million in memory of his late wife, Etta, Mr. Virgil Hayes." The spotlight swung from the stage and hit me. The blue light blinded me for a second, but I did not blink. I walked past Kendra. I walked past Derek. I could smell their fear. It smelled like sweat and cheap cologne. I walked up the stairs to the stage. The applause started slowly, then built into a roar. I stood behind the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. I found them instantly. They were standing alone in the center of the dance floor, frozen in a spotlight of their own making. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. My voice was steady and strong. "I did not write a speech tonight. I just wanted to honor my wife, Etta. She was a woman who believed that true wealth is not what you wear or what you drive. True wealth is loyalty. True wealth is family." I paused and looked directly at Kendra. She was trembling. Tears of shock were running down her face, ruining her makeup. Sadly, I continued, my voice hardening just a fraction. "Some people forget that lesson. Some people think money is a license to treat others like garbage. They think they can throw away the past to buy a future. But I have learned a hard lesson this week. You cannot buy class, and you certainly cannot buy forgiveness." I saw Derek whisper something to Kendra. He was grabbing her hand, probably trying to figure out how to spin this, how to get a piece of the pie now that they knew the size of it. So I announced, "To ensure that my wife's legacy is protected, I have established a new rule for the Etta Hayes Trust. Not one penny of this money will ever go to anyone who has not shown the content of their character. Tonight we celebrate generosity, but we also celebrate justice. I raised my glass. To Etta. To Etta, the crowd roared back. I walked off the stage. I did not go to them. I went to the bar and ordered a sparkling water. I watched in the mirror behind the bar as Marcus, the security guard, tapped Derek on the shoulder. I could not hear what was said, but I saw the color drain from Derek's face. Marcus pointed to the door. They were being asked to leave, not because they were poor, but because they were unwanted. I took a sip of my water. It was cool and refreshing. The party was just getting started, but for Derek and Kendra, the music had stopped. They turned and walked the long walk of shame back to the entrance past the judging eyes of the people they wanted to impress. They walked out into the night where no Porsche waited for them, only the cold reality of a long walk home in borrowed shoes that pinched their feet. I walked out of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel and the cool night air felt clean against my skin. It was a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere of greed I had just left behind in the ballroom. The valet was bringing around the black town car I had hired for the evening. I stood on the curb, adjusting my cufflinks, feeling the weight of the night lift off my shoulders. But the silence did not last long. Behind me, I heard the click-clack of high heels running frantically on the pavement. It was a desperate, uneven sound. "Daddy, wait, please wait." It was Kendra. She ran past the doorman, her silver dress gathered in her hands, her makeup smeared across her cheeks like war paint that had lost the war. She did not look like the arrogant woman who had thrown my passbook in the trash. She looked like a frightened child who had broken a vase and was terrified of the punishment. She threw herself at me, grabbing my arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "Daddy, please, you have to listen to me," she sobbed, her breath coming in short gasps. "It was not me. I never wanted to treat you like that. It was Derek. He made me do it. He brainwashed me, Daddy. He told me you were sick. He told me you needed help. I was just trying to protect you." I looked down at her. Her eyes were wide and pleading, but behind the tears I saw the calculation. She was not sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she had bet on the wrong horse. She saw the town car. She saw the tuxedo. She saw the power I now held, and she wanted back in. Derek walked up behind her. He was out of breath, his rental tuxedo looking even tighter than before. He looked from Kendra to me, trying to gauge the situation. When he heard Kendra throw him under the bus, his face twisted in shock. "Kendra, what are you talking about?" he stammered. "You were the one who wanted to sell the house. You were the one who threw the book away." "Shut up, Derek," Kendra screamed, spinning around to face him. "You ruined everything. You and your gambling debts. You dragged me down with you. Daddy, I had no idea he was in trouble with the mob. I swear, I am a victim here too." She turned back to me, clutching my lapel. "I am your daughter, Daddy, your little girl. You cannot leave me with him. He is a monster." I looked at the two of them standing on the sidewalk under the harsh glare of the streetlights. They were eating each other alive just to get a scrap of my approval. It was pathetic, and it was exactly what I needed to finish them. I raised my hand, silencing them both. I reached out and gently removed Kendra's hand from my jacket. I brushed the spot where she had touched me, as if wiping away dirt. "Kendra," I said, my voice low and soft, so only they could hear. "You are right. You are my daughter. You are my—" And blood is thicker than water. Her face lit up. Hope washed over her features like a spotlight. "Oh, Daddy, I knew you would understand." But I continued, leaning in closer. "I cannot have that man in my life. He disrespected me. He disrespected your mother. As long as you are married to him, you are dead to me. But if you were free, things might be different." The trust has a clause for family rehabilitation, but it has zero tolerance for Derek Bishop. I let that sink in. I saw the gears turning in her head. She was already calculating the divorce settlement. She was already planning how to kick him out. Then I turned to Derek. I took a step toward him. He flinched, thinking I was going to hit him. Instead, I put a hand on his shoulder, pulling him in for a confidential whisper. "Derek," I said so softly that Kendra could not hear a word. "I know about the $2 million. I know about VH Capital. I know you are drowning, son." Derek's eyes went wide. He stopped breathing. "I own that debt now, Derek," I whispered, "and I can make it disappear. I can write it off as a bad investment and you can walk away free and clear. No mobile, no bankruptcy, a fresh start." He looked at me with a desperate hunger. "Really, Virgil, you would do that for me?" I smiled a cold, hard smile. "Not for you, for my peace of mind. I want my daughter back, but she is weak. She needs a push. If you file for divorce tomorrow, if you drag her name through the mud and ensure she gets nothing so she comes crawling back to me humbled, I will wipe your debt clean. But if you stay with her, I will crush you both." I stepped back and looked at them. They were standing 2 feet apart, but they were already miles away from each other. They looked at me, and then they looked at each other. The air between them crackled with suspicion and greed. "Think about it," I said. I got into the back of the town car. The driver closed the door, shutting out the noise of the city. Through the tinted window I watched them. They did not speak. They did not hold hands. They stood there like 2 gunfighters waiting for the signal to draw. I had given them both a loaded weapon and pointed it at the other. Now all I had to do was wait for the bang. The ride back to their apartment must have been the longest journey of their lives. I can only imagine the silence in that taxi. It was not the comfortable silence of companions. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of enemies assessing weaknesses. They were no longer husband and wife. They were competitors in a winner-takes-all game where the prize was my fortune. When they got back to their luxury apartment, the one that was already scheduled for foreclosure, though they did not know it yet, the explosion happened. I did not need a camera to know what went on. I knew their nature. They walked into the living room, the only room that still had furniture since the repo men had not come for the sofas yet. Kendra threw her purse on the table. She turned to Derek, her eyes narrowing. "What did he say to you?" she demanded. "I saw him whisper to you. What did he offer you?" Derek loosened his tie, throwing it on the floor. He laughed a bitter, dry sound. "He offered me a way out, Kendra. He knows you are poison. He told me that if I leave you, he will help me get back on my feet." Liar, Kendra screamed. "He hates you. He told me that I am the heir. He told me that if I dump you, the loser who lost my car and my house, then I get the trust. He wants you gone, Derek, and frankly, so do I." Derek stepped closer to her, his face flushing red. "Oh, so that is how it is. You are going to cut me loose to save your own skin, after everything I did for you. Who paid for your plastic surgery, Kendra? Who leased that Mercedes you loved so much?" "Me. I did everything for you. You did it with borrowed money," Kendra spat back. "You are a fraud, Derek, and now you are a broke fraud. My father is a millionaire. Do you really think I'm going to stick around with a sinking ship when I can be on a yacht? I am calling a lawyer in the morning." "Good," Derek shouted. "Call him." "Because I am calling one too. And I know where all the bodies are buried, Kendra. I know about your little side trips to Vegas. I know about the money you skimmed from the joint account. You think your dad will give you a dime if he knows the truth about his precious little girl?" "You wouldn't dare," Kendra hissed. "Try me," Derek challenged. "You want to play dirty? Let's play." They stood in the center of their failing life, circling each other like wolves. The love was gone if it was ever there. The loyalty was gone. All that was left was the survival instinct of 2 parasites realizing the host was fighting back. I sat in my hotel room sipping a cup of herbal tea. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Vance. Subject monitors indicate high volume of shouting at the Bishop residence. Divorce lawyers are being Googled on both of their phones. I put the phone down and looked out at the city lights. Etta always said that a house divided against itself cannot stand. She was right. I did not have to lift a finger to destroy their marriage. I just had to show them that their greed was worth more than their vows. They were doing the rest of the work for me. Tomorrow the war would move from the living room to the courtroom. Derek would try to destroy Kendra to get his debt forgiveness. Kendra would try to destroy Derek to get her inheritance. And in the process, they would expose every lie, every theft, and every cruelty they had ever committed. They would tear each other apart piece by piece until there was nothing left but the truth. And the truth was the only thing I wanted. I went to bed that night and slept soundly for the first time since Etta died. The justice train was leaving the station and it was picking up speed. There were no brakes on this ride. And the crash at the end was going to be spectacular. The war between my daughter and her husband did not start with a bang. It started with a business card. It was a small rectangular piece of heavy cream-colored cardstock that Derek found hidden at the bottom of Kendra's purse while she was in the shower. I know this because Vance, my private investigator, had access to the cloud backup of Derek's phone where he had taken a picture of it. The card belonged to the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city, a woman known for stripping husbands of their dignity along with their assets. That card was the spark that ignited the powder keg of resentment that had been building in their apartment for days. I sat in my hotel suite listening to the audio feed from the bug Vance had planted in their living room. It was not easy to listen to. I heard the shower turn off. I heard Kendra humming to herself, thinking she had outsmarted everyone. She thought she was going to cut Derek loose and come running back to Daddy's millions. But she had forgotten that a cornered rat fights the hardest. When she walked into the bedroom, Derek was waiting for her. I could hear the trembling rage in his voice when he asked her about the lawyer. "You are leaving me!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "After I spent every dime I had on you. After I lied for you. After I stole for you. You are going to dump me like garbage." I heard Kendra try to deny it at first. She used her usual tactics of manipulation and gaslighting. She called him paranoid. She told him he was crazy. But Derek had the card. The evidence was in his hand. And that was when the veneer of civilization cracked. I heard the sound of paper ripping. Then I heard the sound of a lamp crashing against the wall. "You think you are going to take the money and run?" Derek yelled. "You think your old man is going to welcome you back with open arms? You are nothing without me, Kendra. I made you. I bought you those clothes. I introduced you to society. You were just a steelworker's daughter until I polished you up." I gripped the arm of my chair. My knuckles turned white. He was talking about my daughter as if she were a piece of property he had renovated. Then came the sound that no father ever wants to hear. It was the sound of a hand striking flesh, followed by a scream. It was not the fake scream Kendra used when she broke a nail. It was a scream of genuine fear. The fight had turned physical. Derek had crossed the line from verbal abuse to violence. He was trying to beat the loyalty back into her. I picked up my phone to call the police, but neighbors had beaten me to it. Through the audio feed, I heard the heavy pounding on their front door. Police open up. The chaos that followed was a symphony of destruction. I heard the door being kicked in. I heard officers shouting commands. I heard Derek screaming that it was a misunderstanding that she fell, that she was hysterical. But the police did not buy it. I heard the click of handcuffs. I heard Kendra sobbing, playing the victim perfectly. But this time the tears were real. She was bleeding. Her lip was split. Her eye was swelling. The monster she had married had finally shown her his true face. They dragged Derek out of the apartment in front of the entire building. He was kicking and screaming, threatening to sue the department, threatening to call the mayor, but they shoved him into the back of a squad car. Kendra was treated by paramedics on the scene, but she refused to go to the hospital. She wanted to stay close to the phone. She wanted to call me, but I had turned my phone off. I needed her to sit in the wreckage of her life for one night without a savior. I needed her to realize that money could not buy safety and that her choices had consequences that a check could not fix. Derek was released on bail the next morning. I knew he would be. He used the last limit on a hidden emergency credit card to pay a bondsman. He was desperate. He was homeless since a restraining order now barred him from the apartment. He was facing assault charges. He was facing the mob debt. And he knew that his wife had turned on him. He had nothing left to lose, and a man with nothing to lose is a dangerous man. I was eating breakfast in my suite when the phone rang. It was not Vance. It was an unknown number. I knew who it was. I swiped the screen and put the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. I just listened. Virgil, the voice on the other end, was slurred. It sounded like whiskey and panic. "It is your favorite son-in-law." "You are not my son, Derek," I said calmly. "And you are barely in-law anymore." He laughed, a wet, hacking sound. "Oh, do not count me out yet, old man. I am a survivor. I am at a Motel 6 off the interstate. It is a real dump. Kind of reminds me of your house. But I have been doing some thinking. You see, Virgil, I know you have the money. I know you bought my debt. You are squeezing me. You want to crush me." I took a sip of coffee. "I am not squeezing you, Derek. I am just letting gravity take its course." "Gravity," he spat. "Listen to me carefully, you self-righteous prick. I want $5 million, in cash, in a duffel bag, by tomorrow noon." I almost laughed. "And why would I give you $5 million, Derek?" "Because if you do not, I am going to destroy you," he hissed. "I am going to go to the press. I am going to go to every news station in the city. And do you know what I am going to tell them? I am going to tell them that you are senile. I am going to tell them that you abused Kendra when she was a child. I am going to tell them that your millions came from illegal activities, that Etta was laundering money for gangs. My blood ran cold. He was threatening to dirty Etta's name. He was threatening to accuse me of the most heinous crime a father could commit. Nobody will believe you, I said, keeping my voice steady though rage was boiling in my gut. People love a scandal, Derek said. Even if it is not true, the stain never washes out. They will investigate. They will freeze your assets again. Your reputation as the generous philanthropist will be gone. You will be the creepy old man who touched his daughter. And Kendra, she is so weak she might even go along with it if I promise her half the money. Do you want to take that risk, Virgil? $5 million is a small price to pay for your legacy. He was bluffing about Kendra. She hated him now. But the threat to my reputation and to Etta's memory was real. In the court of public opinion, the accusation is often the verdict. I looked down at the digital recorder sitting on the table next to my coffee cup. The red light was steady. Every word, every vile threat, every slur was being captured in high-definition audio. You are playing a dangerous game, Derek, I said, my voice dropping an octave. Blackmail is a felony. So is assault, Derek countered. And I am already facing that. What is one more charge? I do not care, Virgil. I am drowning. You either throw me a life raft or I pull you down with me. $5 million, tomorrow noon, or prepare to be famous for all the wrong reasons. He hung up. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of the luxury suite. Outside, the sun was shining on the city, but inside I felt the chill of the gutter Derek had dragged us into. Most men would be afraid. Most men would call their lawyer and ask how to pay him off to make it go away. But I was not most men. I was a man who had worked with molten steel. I knew that to shape something you had to apply heat and pressure until it broke or bent to your will. I pressed the stop button on the recorder. I saved the file. I named it The Coffin Nail. I could have sent this to the police immediately. It was enough to revoke his bail and send him back to jail for extortion. But I did not. Not yet. Jail was too easy for Derek. He needed to be exposed publicly. He needed to be destroyed in a way that left no doubt who he was. He wanted to play the legal game. He wanted to use the court of public opinion. Fine. I would give him his day in court. I would let him walk into the trap thinking he was the hunter. I would let him file his false motions. I would let him stand before a judge and lie under oath. And then when he had dug his grave so deep he could not see the sky, I would play this tape. I picked up the phone and dialed Vance. "Did you get that?" Vance asked. Loud and clear, I said. "Do you want me to pick him up?" Vance asked. "He is at the Motel 6 like he said." "No," I said, standing up and walking to the window. "Let him run. Let him think I am scared. Let him file his papers. He wants a war, Vance. Let's give him a war. But tell the lawyers to get ready. We are going to court. And tell them to bring the big speakers. I want everyone to hear what a $5 million mistake sounds like." I looked down at the city. Derek thought he had cornered me. He thought he had found my weak spot. He did not know that he had just handed me the hammer I would use to smash his life into dust. The divorce war was over. The annihilation was about to begin. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a cold, sterile place where lives were decided by the pound of a gavel. I sat at the defendant table next to my lawyer, Mr. Sterling. My hands were folded calmly on the polished wood, but my heart was beating a rhythm of pure rage. Across the aisle, Derek sat with a lawyer who looked like he chased ambulances for a living. Derek was wearing a new suit probably bought on another credit card he could not afford. He did not look at me. He kept whispering to his attorney, pointing at papers and sweating through his collar. This was his Hail Mary pass. He had filed an emergency motion for guardianship, claiming I was mentally incompetent and that my sudden spending was a symptom of advanced dementia. He wanted the court to freeze my assets and put him in charge of my life. It was a bold move. It was a desperate move. And it was about to blow up in his face. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Walters, with glasses perched on the end of her nose, looked over the filings. She did not look impressed. "Mr. Bishop," she said, looking at Derek, "you are claiming that your father-in-law is a danger to himself and others. That is a serious accusation. You have the burden of proof." Derek stood up. He buttoned his jacket, trying to look like the successful businessman he pretended to be. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "it breaks my heart to do this. Virgil has been like a father to me, but since his wife died, he has snapped. He wanders the streets in dirty clothes. He begs strangers for money. He spends millions on frivolous things. We just want to protect him. We want to make sure his legacy is safe. I watched him lie. He was good at it. He had practiced that sad, concerned tone in the mirror. To support our claim, Derek continued. We would like to call Dr. Aris to the stand. He has reviewed Mr. Hayes' medical history and observed his behavior. Dr. Aris walked to the stand. I had never seen this man in my life. He was a small, nervous man with shifty eyes. He took the oath, but I could see his fingers crossed behind his back, figuratively speaking. Dr. Aris, Derek's lawyer, asked, In your professional opinion, what is Mr. Hayes' condition? The doctor cleared his throat. Based on the reports provided by the family and my observation of the subject today, I believe he is suffering from rapid onset frontal lobe dementia. The erratic spending, the delusions of grandeur, the paranoia, it is all textbook. He needs 24-hour supervision, preferably in a facility controlled by his next of kin. I looked at Derek. He was smirking. He thought he had won. He thought that because he had paid a doctor $5,000 to lie, the judge would hand him the keys to the kingdom. He forgot that I was not just an old man anymore. I was an old man with the best legal team money could buy. Mr. Sterling. My lawyer stood up. He did not look worried. He looked like a shark smelling blood in the water. Your Honor, Mr. Sterling said, we would like to present a rebuttal. We do not have a paid opinion. We have facts, and we have evidence that Mr. Bishop's concern is not for his father-in-law's health, but for his bank account. The judge nodded. Proceed, counselor. Mr. Sterling walked to the center of the room. First, Your Honor, regarding the claim that Mr. Hayes is delusional about his wealth, I present to the court the certified audit of the Etta Hayes Trust. The $18 million is real. The spending is within his rights as the sole beneficiary. He slapped a thick binder on the judge's bench. Second, regarding the claim that Mr. Hayes is paranoid. We argue that his paranoia is actually a justified reaction to a very real threat. A threat named Derek Bishop. Derek's lawyer jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. This is character assassination. Overruled, the judge said, leaning forward. I want to hear this. Mr. Sterling turned to the bailiff. Please play Exhibit A. A large monitor on the wall flickered to life. The courtroom lights dimmed. The screen showed a grainy but clear video. It was the footage from the button camera I had worn in the supply closet. The sound was crisp. Everyone in the courtroom heard Derek's voice screaming, Where have you been, you stupid old fool? Then came the sound of the slap. It echoed off the courtroom walls like a gunshot. The video showed me falling into the boxes. It showed Derek looming over me, his face twisted in rage. You are going to sign this right now. You are going to sign over the trust, the house, and every cent you have. The courtroom went deadly silent. I looked at the jury box, even though there was no jury today, just court staff. Their mouths were open. I looked at Derek. His smirk was gone. His face had turned a sickly shade of gray. He was gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. The video continued. It played the part where Kendra walked in. Sign it, Dad. Sign it, and then go die somewhere quiet. Mr. Sterling paused the video right on Derek's raised fist. Your Honor. Mr. Sterling said, his voice cutting through the silence. Does this look like a loving son trying to protect a senile father? Or does it look like a desperate debtor trying to extort money from a vulnerable senior citizen? Derek's lawyer was frantically whispering to him, trying to find a way out. But Mr. Sterling was not done. We have one more piece of evidence, Your Honor. It speaks to the character of the plaintiff. Mr. Sterling pulled a plastic evidence bag from his briefcase. Inside was the old blue passbook that Kendra had thrown in the trash. He pulled out a small yellowed piece of paper that had been tucked inside the back cover. This is a note written by the late Etta Hayes dated 2 years ago. She anticipated this day. Mr. Sterling adjusted his glasses and read aloud. If anyone is reading this, it means I am gone. And if my husband Virgil is holding this book, it means my daughter and her husband have tried to take advantage of him. I want it known that Derek Bishop is a man of low character. He has stolen from our retirement jar. He has lied about his business. I fear for Virgil's safety when I am not there to protect him. Please do not let him take the house. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Etta. Even from the grave she was protecting me. She had seen through Derek years ago when I was too blind to see it. The judge took the note. She read it silently. Then she looked up at Derek. Her eyes were not just cold, they were furious. Mr. Bishop, stand up, she ordered. Derek stood up. His legs were shaking so bad his chair rattled against the floor. "I have seen enough," the judge said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a sledgehammer. "You came into my courtroom and wasted the court's time. You perjured yourself. You suborned perjury from this so-called doctor." She pointed at Dr. Aris, who was trying to sneak out the back door. "Bailiff, detain that man. I want his medical license reviewed by the state board by the end of the day." Dr. Aris was grabbed by the bailiff. He started crying immediately, pointing at Derek. "He paid me. He told me what to say. It was his idea." The judge turned back to Derek. "Mr. Bishop, I am dismissing your petition with prejudice. That means you can never file it again. Furthermore, I am forwarding the video evidence we just watched to the district attorney's office. That looked like assault, battery, and attempted extortion to me." Derek looked around the room. He looked for an exit. He looked for a friend. He found neither. "Your Honor," Derek stammered. "It was a misunderstanding. The video is out of context. We were role-playing. It was a therapy exercise." The judge banged her gavel so hard I thought the handle would break. "Silence," she roared. "You are a disgrace. Get out of my courtroom before I hold you in contempt and throw you in a cell right now. The police will be waiting for you outside." Derek did not wait to be told twice. He grabbed his briefcase, forgetting his coat. He pushed past his own lawyer. He ran down the aisle, his fancy shoes slipping on the polished floor. He looked like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. He burst through the double doors and into the hallway. I sat there and took a deep breath. The air in the courtroom didn't smell like floor wax anymore. It smelled like justice. Mr. Sterling put a hand on my shoulder. "We did it, Virgil. He is finished." I stood up, leaning on my cane. "Not yet," I said. "He is running, but he has nowhere to go. The mob wants his money. The police want his freedom, and I want his soul." I walked out of the courtroom slowly. I walked past the spot where Dr. Aris was being handcuffed. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun. I saw Derek running down the street toward his car, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. He was panicked. He was terrified. He was exactly where I wanted him. He was going to do something stupid now. Desperation makes men careless. And when he made his next move, I would be waiting. The legal battle was over. The physical battle was about to begin. I signaled for my car. "Follow him," I told the driver. "Do not let him out of your sight. Today ends with one of us standing, and it is not going to be him." I thought the war was over when I walked out of that courtroom. I thought the judge's gavel had ended the nightmare. But a cornered rat does not surrender. It bites. I was sitting in the back of my town car watching the city pass by, feeling the first moment of peace I had known in weeks when my phone rang. It was Kendra. I expected her to be crying about the money or begging for forgiveness again. But when I answered, all I heard was a scream. It was a primal sound, a sound that tore through my heart like a serrated knife. "He took him, Dad," she shrieked. "He took Leo." My blood froze. Leo was my 7-year-old grandson. He was the only innocent thing in this entire mess. "Who took him?" I asked, my voice turning to ice. Derek, Kendra sobbed. "He picked him up from school 10 minutes ago. The school called me. They said his father came to get him for a dentist appointment." "But there is no appointment, Dad. He has him. And he just sent me a picture of a gun." Before I could speak, another call came through. It was an unknown number. I clicked over. "Hello, Virgil." It was Derek. His voice was not the slick, confident voice of the real estate agent anymore. It was high-pitched and trembling. It was the voice of a man who had looked into the abyss and decided to jump. "Where is the boy, Derek?" I said. "If you touch one hair on his head, I will kill you." Derek laughed. It was a jagged, broken sound. "You do not get to make threats anymore, old man. I have the leverage now. I am at the old plant. You know the place. Sector 4, the blast furnace. You bring the $5 million in cash. You come alone. If I see a cop, if I see a drone, if I see anyone but you, Leo goes over the edge. You have 30 minutes. The line went dead. Sector 4, the blast furnace. I knew that place better than I knew the lines on my own hand. I had spent 30 years of my life inside the belly of that steel mill. I knew every catwalk, every rusted bolt, every dark corner where a man could hide. Derek thought he had chosen a secluded spot to terrorize me. He did not realize he had just invited a shark into the ocean. I tapped on the partition. Driver stopped the car. "But sir," the driver said. "Get out," I ordered. "I need the car." I left the driver on the sidewalk with $1,000 in cash and jumped into the front seat. I did not call the police. Not yet. Sirens would panic Derek, and a panicked man with a gun makes mistakes that cost lives. I drove toward the industrial district, my foot heavy on the gas pedal. The city blurred past me. I was not a millionaire anymore. I was not a retiree. I was a grandfather, and I was going to war. The steel mill had been abandoned for 10 years. It loomed against the gray sky like the skeleton of a dead giant. The gates were chained shut, but I knew the service road around the back, the one the trucks used to take to dump slag. I drove the car through the rusted fence, tearing the paint, but I did not care. I killed the engine 100 yards from the main building and stepped out into the silence. The air smelled of wet rust and old oil. It was a smell that brought back 1,000 memories of sweat and labor. I walked into the main hangar. It was vast, a cathedral of industry where shafts of light cut through the gloom like lasers. I moved silently. My expensive dress shoes made no sound on the concrete floor. I was hunting. Virgil Derrick screamed. His voice echoed off the metal walls, bouncing around so you could not tell where it came from. I know you are here. Bring the money out. I crept up the metal stairs to the second-level catwalk. I looked down. In the center of the main floor, near the edge of the pit where we used to pour molten steel, Derek was standing. He had one arm wrapped around Leo. In his other hand, he held a pistol. He was shaking so bad the gun was waving around like a conductor's baton. Leo was crying, his small body trembling against his father's legs. "I am here, Derek," I shouted, my voice booming from the shadows. "But I do not have the money." Derek spun around, looking up at the catwalks, trying to spot me in the darkness. "You are lying," he screamed. "You have millions. Bring it to me." I moved to the left, staying behind a massive steel pillar. "I did not bring the money, Derek, because you are not leaving here with it. You are not leaving here at all." I saw him tighten his grip on Leo. Leo yelped. "Stop hiding!" Old man Derek yelled. "Come down here, I shoot the kid. I swear I will do it. I have nothing left. You took everything from me. You took it from yourself," I said, moving again. I grabbed a heavy iron bolt from the floor. I threw it hard against the metal wall on the far right side of the hangar. Clang. Derek spun toward the sound, firing a shot into the darkness. The gunshot was deafening. Leo screamed. While he was distracted, I moved faster. I knew the layout. I knew that the platform he was standing on had a weak grate. We had marked it for repair 10 years ago, right before the plant closed. It was covered by a metal sheet, but if you stepped on the edge, it would tip. I came down the service ladder behind him. I was on the ground floor now, only 20 feet away. I stepped out of the shadows. "Let the boy go." "Derek," I said calmly. Derek whipped around. His eyes were wide and bloodshot. He looked like a rabid animal. He pointed the gun at me. "Stay back," he shrieked. "I will kill you. I will kill both of you." "Leo, run to Grandpa," I said softly. Derek pulled Leo back. "No, nobody is running. Give me the keys to the car. We are leaving." I took a step forward. "You are not thinking, Derek. Look at where you are standing. This is my house. I built this floor. I poured this concrete. You are just a tourist here." "Shut up," Derek yelled, stepping back. He was inching closer to the edge of the pit, closer to the weak grate. "I am giving you one chance," I said, my muscles tensing. "Let him go." Derek laughed a manic sound. "You are an old man, Virgil. What are you going to do? Hit me with your cane. I have a gun. I have the power." He took another step back. His heel hit the edge of the metal sheet covering the hole. Now I yelled. I did not run at him. I kicked the release lever of the crane counterweight next to me. A massive, heavy chain swung down from the ceiling, swinging in a low arc. It was a trick we used to play on rookies, but today it was a weapon. The chain swung through the air with a low whoosh. Derek saw it too late. He tried to duck, but the heavy steel links caught him in the shoulder. The impact knocked him sideways. He lost his grip on the gun. It skittered across the floor and fell into the pit. He lost his grip on Leo. "Leo, run!" I screamed. Leo scrambled away, running toward me. I grabbed him and shoved him behind a concrete pillar. Derek was on the ground, clutching his shoulder, but he was young and he was full of adrenaline. He scrambled to his feet, screaming in rage. He charged at me. He expected to fight a frail senior citizen. He did not know he was fighting a man who had lifted steel beams for a living. I planted my feet. When he reached me, I did not retreat. I caught his punch in my left hand. I felt the shock of it, but I did not move. I grabbed his lapel with my right hand. the same hand that had held a welding torch for 12 hours a day. I twisted his jacket, pulling him off balance. "You disrespected my daughter," I growled, slamming him against the steel column. "You stole from my family," I shouted, driving a knee into his stomach. He doubled over, gasping for air. "And you touched my grandson." I grabbed him by the back of his neck and marched him toward the railing. I forced his head down, looking into the black abyss of the pit below. "Look at it, Derek," I whispered in his ear. "That is where the garbage goes." Derek was sobbing now, begging for mercy. "Don't kill me. Virgil, please. I am sorry. I will do anything." I pulled him back from the edge and threw him onto the floor. He curled into a ball, weeping. "I am not going to kill you," I said, straightening my tie. "That would be too easy." Suddenly the hangar was flooded with red and blue lights. The wail of sirens pierced the air. The heavy doors at the front of the mill burst open and a SWAT team poured in. Police dropped to the ground. I raised my hands slowly. I stepped away from Derek. "He is all yours, officers," I said. Leo ran out from behind the pillar and buried his face in my legs. "Grandpa," he cried. I picked him up. I held him tight, feeling his small heart beating against my chest. "It is okay, Leo. I have you. Grandpa has you." The police swarmed Derek. They pinned him to the ground, cuffing his hands behind his back. He was screaming that I had attacked him, that I was crazy. But nobody was listening. They dragged him up. His fancy suit was covered in oil and rust. His face was streaked with tears and dirt. A police captain walked over to me. He lowered his weapon when he saw Leo in my arms. "Mr. Hayes," he asked. "We tracked the phone signal." "Are you hurt?" "I am fine," I said. "Just taking out the trash." I watched them drag Derek toward the patrol cars. He looked back at me one last time. His eyes were empty. He knew it was over. Not just the money, not just the marriage. His life as a free man was done. He had gambled everything on fear, and he had lost to a man made of steel. I carried Leo out of the dark hangar and into the daylight. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was the end of a long, violent day. But as I walked toward the ambulance to get Leo checked out, I felt lighter than I had in years. The parasite was gone. The threat was neutralized. And my family, what was left of it, was safe. I kissed Leo on the forehead. "Let's go home, son," I whispered. "It is finally over." The police station was a carnival of misery, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like trapped flies, and the smell of stale coffee mixing with the sharp tang of fear. I sat on a hard plastic bench holding a cup of lukewarm water, watching officers process the night's catch. Derek was already in a holding cell screaming for a lawyer who would not come. But I was not there for Derek. I was there for the woman sitting in the interview room, huddled under a thin gray blanket. My daughter, Kendra. When the detective opened the door and let me in, Kendra looked up. Her mascara was running down her face in black rivers, and her expensive dress was torn at the hem. She looked small. She looked like the little girl who used to scrape her knee and come running to me for a Band-Aid. For a second, my heart softened. It is a father's curse to love his child even when he hates who they have become. But then she spoke. "Daddy," she cried, jumping up from the metal chair. "Thank God you are here. You have to get me out of here. It smells like bleach and sweat. I cannot breathe." She reached for me, but I took a step back. I did not offer her a hug. I offered her silence. "Daddy, please," she continued, her voice rising in pitch. "You know I had nothing to do with this. It was all Derek. He is crazy. I told you he was crazy. When he took Leo, I tried to stop him. I really did. But he had a gun. What was I supposed to do? I am a victim here too." I looked at her hands. They were trembling. Not from fear, I realized, but from withdrawal. Withdrawal from the power and control she thought she had. "You are a victim?" I asked, my voice flat. "Yes," she nodded eagerly, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "He forced me to sign those papers at the office. He forced me to throw away your passbook. He terrified me, Daddy. I was a battered wife. You have to tell the police that. You have to tell them I was a hostage in my own home. And please pay the bail. They set it at $50,000. I know you have it. Just write the check and we can go get Leo and go to a hotel. We can start over. Just you, me, and Leo." She smiled then. It was a weak, tentative smile, but behind it I saw the gears turning. She was already planning the next move. She was already spending the money she thought I would give her to comfort her trauma. "And Daddy," she added, lowering her voice, Since Derek is going away for a long time, I will need access to the trust immediately. For Leo, of course. He needs therapy. He needs private school. We need a safe house away from the press. You understand, right? There it was. The money. It always came back to the money. She had not asked if I was hurt. She had not asked how Leo was doing right now. She asked for a check. I reached into my jacket pocket. I did not pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a folded document. It was the same document Mr. Sterling had read in court, but this was the full version. The version Etta had agonized over in her final days. "Sit down, Kendra," I said. She hesitated, but the look in my eyes gave her no choice. She sat down, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I listened to you, Kendra," I said. "I listened to you blame your husband. I listened to you play the victim. And if I was just a senile old man, I might believe you. But I am not senile. And I have a memory." I unfolded the paper. "I remember when you were 16 and you stole money from your mother's purse to buy a designer bag. You blamed your friend. I remember when you crashed your car and blamed the other driver even though you were texting. You have spent your entire life blaming others for your wreckage. But this time, there is nobody left to blame." "Daddy, what are you doing?" she whispered. "I am reading you the final clause of the Etta Hayes Trust," I said. I put on my reading glasses. The room felt very small. Section 14, paragraph C, I read aloud. "In the event that my daughter Kendra Bishop is found to be complicit in any act of financial abuse, physical neglect, or emotional harm against her parents or her children, she shall be immediately and permanently removed as a beneficiary. Furthermore, if she fails to protect the family from external threats due to her own greed or negligence, she forfeits all claims to the estate." I looked up. Kendra was staring at me, her mouth open. "Complicit," she stammered. "I was not complicit. I told you Derek made me do it." I pulled out the digital recorder from my pocket. I placed it on the table between us. "Really?" I asked. "Because I have a recording of you in the supply closet. I have you saying, 'Sign it, Dad, and go die somewhere quiet.' That sounds like complicit to me. That sounds like you were the ringleader until the ship started sinking." Kendra's face went white. She stared at the recorder as if it were a bomb. "That was out of context," she shrieked. "I was stressed. I didn't mean it." "And then there is the matter of protection," I continued, ignoring her outburst. "You knew Derek was in debt to the mob. You knew he was dangerous. Yet you stayed. You stayed because you wanted the lifestyle. You put your son in danger because you wanted to drive a Mercedes. You failed to protect Leo, and that is the one thing Etta could never forgive." I folded the paper and put it back in my pocket. "So here is how it is going to be, Kendra. I am not posting your bail. You are going to stay in this cell until your arraignment. You are going to face charges for conspiracy and child endangerment. The district attorney has already heard the tapes." "No," she screamed, jumping up. "You cannot leave me here. I am your daughter." "And regarding the money," I said, standing up, "the trust is closed to you, forever. Not one dime. Not for a house, not for a car, not for a lawyer. The money goes to Leo. And since I am his legal guardian now, I will decide how it is spent. And I can promise you it will not be spent on you." Kendra lunged across the table. She grabbed my lapels. She was not crying anymore. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. "It is my money," she screamed, shaking me. "It is mine. Mom wanted me to have it. You stole it, you old thief. Give it to me. I deserve it. I put up with you people for 30 years. I deserve a payoff." I looked at her hands clutching my suit. They were the hands of a stranger. I carefully peeled her fingers off one by one. "You do not deserve a payoff," I said, my voice calm and final. "You deserve a reality check." I turned and walked toward the heavy steel door. "Daddy, wait!" she yelled, her voice breaking. "I am sorry. I love you. Please come back." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at her. She was standing in the center of the room, wild-eyed and panting. "You do not love me, Kendra," I said. "You love my wallet. And now that it is closed, you have nothing left to say to me." I opened the door. "Daddy!" she shrieked, the sound echoing down the hallway. "You cannot do this. I will sue you. I will tell everyone. I hate you. I hate you." I stepped out and the officer closed the door. The sound of her screaming was cut off instantly, replaced by the hum of the station. "Mr. Hayes," the officer said, looking uncomfortable. "Do you need a moment?" "No, officer," I said, adjusting my jacket. "I am done here." I walked out of the station and into the night air. It was cold, but it felt clean. I had lost a daughter that night, but in truth I had lost her a long time ago. I had just finally accepted the loss. I walked to the car where Leo was sleeping in the back seat wrapped in a warm blanket. I looked at his peaceful face. He was the future, and I would make sure he grew up knowing that character is worth more than currency. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the station one last time. Kendra was in there alone with her choices. She had wanted to live like a queen. Now she would have to learn to live like a human being. And that was the hardest lesson of all. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, the path was clear. I was Virgil Hayes. I was a father. I was a grandfather. And I was free. The sun rose over the city of Chicago on a Tuesday morning that felt heavy with humidity and impending doom. I sat in the back of my car parked across the street from the glass-fronted building that housed Bishop Real Estate. Derek was out on bail again, having leveraged the last shred of equity in his company to pay the bondsman. He was a man running on fumes, but his arrogance was a fuel that burned slow and hot. I watched him pace back and forth in the lobby of his office through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was on the phone screaming at his staff. I could not hear the words, but I knew the rhythm. He was trying to stop the bleeding. He was trying to convince his agents not to quit. He was trying to convince his clients that the arrest for kidnapping and the restraining order and the freezing of his assets were all just a misunderstanding. He believed that as long as he had this office, he had a future. It was his fortress. He had spent a fortune renovating it. Marble floors, mahogany desks, a reception area that looked like a five-star hotel. To Derek, this building was proof that he was a success. It was the one asset I had not touched yet. He thought I could not touch it. He owned the building. It was in his name. He had made sure of that years ago when he first married Kendra. He thought he was smart. He thought he had built a castle that was impregnable. But Derek was a man who looked at the skyline and forgot to look at the ground beneath his feet. He forgot that a castle is useless if you cut off the bridge, and I was about to blow up the bridge. I picked up the heavy file sitting on the seat next to me. It was the last secret Etta had left me. The one she had hidden in the very back of the passbook tucked behind a flap of leather I had almost missed. It was a deed. Not for a house. Not for a stock portfolio. But for a patch of asphalt. Specifically, the 20,000 square feet of asphalt that surrounded Derek's building. The parking lot. I stepped out of the car. The heat of the pavement radiated through the soles of my shoes. It was a familiar heat. The heat of the city summer. I walked across the street. I did not walk with a limp today. I walked with the steady gait of a foreman walking onto a job site. I walked right past the fancy sign that said "Client Parking Only." I walked right past the reserved space for Derek Bishop, President. I stopped at the front door. I did not go inside. I just stood there and waited. Derek saw me. He dropped his phone. He ran to the door, pushing it open so hard it nearly cracked against the stopper. "What do you want now, Virgil?" he screamed. "You cannot be here. I have a restraining order against you. You are harassing me. This is my place of business. Get off my property." I looked at him. He looked terrible. His eyes were sunken. His expensive suit was wrinkled. He looked like a man who had not slept in days because the demons were too loud. "I am not on your property, Derek," I said calmly. "I am standing on the sidewalk. That is public property. But I am looking at your parking lot. It is a nice lot, freshly paved, good lines." Derek looked confused. "What are you talking about? Are you crazy? Get out of here before I call the cops again." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of a lease agreement dated 30 years ago. "You know, Derek," I said, "Etta was a visionary. When she bought land, she bought strategic land. She bought the land this office sits on back when it was a junkyard. And when you bought the building 5 years ago, you were so arrogant you didn't even check who owned the land around it. You just signed the lease transfer for the parking lot, assuming it was part of the deal." Derek grabbed the paper from my hand. He scanned it frantically. His hand started to shake. "This says the lease is for 30 years, he stammered. "So what? I pay the rent. It is automatic." "Look at the date, Derek," I said, pointing to the bottom of the page. He looked. June 15th. "That was yesterday," I said. "The lease expired at midnight last night." Derek looked up. His face was gray. "So I will renew it. I will pay you double. I will write a check right now." I shook my head slowly. No, I do not think so. You see, I have other plans for this land. I have always wanted a community garden, or maybe just a pile of dirt. Anything is better than a parking lot for a criminal enterprise. You cannot do this, Derek shrieked. My clients need to park here. My agents need to park here. If there is no parking, there is no business. This is the only entrance. The back is blocked by the alley. I smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a judge delivering a sentence. You should have thought about that before you threw my passbook in the trash. You should have thought about that before you kidnapped my grandson. You built your kingdom on my land, Derek. And now I am taking the land back. I turned and signaled to the corner. A low rumble filled the air. It grew louder and louder until the ground beneath our feet began to vibrate. Derek turned around. Rounding the corner were 3 massive yellow bulldozers and a crew of men with jackhammers. They were loud, they were dirty, they were beautiful, they were the cavalry. What is that? Derek screamed over the noise of the engines. That is the eviction notice, I yelled back. The machines rolled onto the lot. They did not wait. The foreman looked at me and I gave him a thumbs up. The first jackhammer hit the asphalt with a deafening crack. Derek ran toward them, waving his arms. Stop! Stop it! You are destroying my business. The workers ignored him. They were paid by the hour, and they were paid by me. The first bulldozer dropped its blade and tore into the pristine blacktop of Derek's reserved parking space. It ripped up the asphalt like it was tissue paper. The sound of tearing pavement was the sweetest music I had ever heard. Clients inside the office were looking out the windows in horror. They saw the chaos. They saw the dust rising in thick clouds. They saw their cars being blocked in or threatened by the destruction. They started running out of the building. What is going on? One woman shouted, clutching her purse. Is the building coming down? No, ma'am, I said, tipping my hat. Just the parking lot. The owner of this business forgot to pay his rent. I would move your car if I were you. We are digging a trench across the entrance in about 5 minutes. The panic was instant. Clients and agents scrambled to their cars, honking horns, yelling at each other, trying to escape before the bulldozers blocked the exit. It was a stampede. Derek stood in the middle of it all, coughing in the dust, screaming at everyone to stay. Do not leave, he begged a wealthy client. We can fix this. It is just a misunderstanding. The client rolled up his window and sped away, nearly running over Derek's foot. I stood by the curb watching the empire collapse. It did not take fire. It did not take a bomb. It just took a little bit of paper and some heavy machinery. Within 20 minutes, the beautiful parking lot was a field of broken concrete and dirt mounds. The entrance to the building was cut off by a 6-foot ditch. Derek stood on the steps of his empty office. His staff had left. His clients had fled. The phone lines inside were probably ringing off the hook with cancellations, but there was nobody left to answer them. He looked at me through the dust cloud. He looked small. He looked defeated. Why, he mouthed. I could not hear him over the jackhammers, but I knew the word. I walked up to the edge of the ditch. I looked across at him. Because you forgot where you came from, I shouted. You forgot that the steel that built this city and the men who work it are stronger than your paper lies. I turned my back on him. I walked to my car. The noise of the destruction faded as I drove away, but the image of Derek standing alone on his island of ruins stayed with me. He was a king without a kingdom, a captain without a ship, and tomorrow the bank would come for the building itself because a real estate office without a parking lot is worth $0. He was bankrupt. He was broken, and the secret in the back of the passbook had been the final nail in his coffin. Etta had known. She had always known. And today she had reached out from the past to protect our future one last time. They say that prison changes a man, but for Derek, it did not change him so much as it revealed him. I did not visit him. I had no desire to see the face of the man who had threatened my grandson ever again. But Vance, my investigator, kept tabs on the situation because I needed to be sure that the threat was truly neutralized. The reports I received painted a picture of a man whose arrogance had been stripped away, leaving nothing but a shivering husk. Derek was being held in the county lockup awaiting trial for kidnapping, extortion, and assault. He was denied bail because he was considered a flight risk and a danger to the community. The man who used to strut around his office in $3,000 Italian suits was now wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big and smelled of industrial detergent and other men's sweat. Vance told me that on his first day, Derek tried to play the big shot. He walked into the common area and tried to negotiate for a better table, using the same slick sales tactics he had used to swindle homebuyers. He tried to tell the other inmates that he was a wealthy developer who could make things happen for them on the outside. But prison is not a boardroom. The currency in there is not promises, it is respect, and Derek commanded none. He was laughed at, then he was pushed, then he was broken. The other inmates smelled the fear on him like sharks smell blood in the water. They saw a soft man, a man who had never done a day of hard labor in his life, a man who preyed on the elderly and children. Even criminals have a code, and hurting a child is the ultimate violation of that code. Derek found himself at the bottom of the food chain. He spent his nights huddled in his bunk, terrified to close his eyes, listening to the screams and the clanging of bars that echoed through the concrete block. He lost weight. His hair began to fall out from the stress. The smooth-talking predator who had threatened to throw my grandson into a blast furnace was now the one praying for mercy every time the cell door opened. I felt no pity for him. Every time I looked at Leo playing safely in my garden, I remembered the gun in Derek's hand. Justice is not always a gavel banging in a courtroom. Sometimes justice is a mirror. Derek was finally forced to look at himself in the mirror of that steel cell, and for the first time he could not look away from the monster staring back. He had wanted to be a king. Now he was just a number. Inmate 8940. And that number was all he would be for the next 15 years. While Derek rotted in a cage of steel, Kendra was trapped in a prison of her own making. The trust fund was closed. The credit cards were canceled. The luxury apartment was repossessed. She had been released on her own recognizance pending trial, but she had nowhere to go. Her high society friends, the ones she had spent thousands of dollars impressing, stopped answering her calls the moment the news broke. She was toxic. She was destitute. And for the first time in her life, she had to work. She found a job at a diner on the outskirts of the city. It was a place with sticky floors and fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry hornets. It was the kind of place she used to mock. I went there once not to humiliate her, but to see if there was any humility in her. I sat in a car across the street and watched through the window. She was wearing a uniform that was stained with grease. Her hair, which used to be perfectly coiffed, was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked 10 years older than she was. I watched her rush from table to table carrying heavy trays of food. Her feet were swollen. She was not wearing designer heels anymore. She was wearing cheap sneakers that had seen better days. I saw her approach a booth where a group of teenagers were sitting. They were loud and rude. Kendra placed the glasses of ice water on the table and her hand shook. She spilled a little water on the table. "Hey, watch it!" one of the boys yelled. He stood up and pointed a finger in her face. "Are you stupid or something? Look what you did. You got my phone wet." I watched Kendra freeze. I saw the old anger flash in her eyes. I saw her mouth open, ready to scream, "Do you know who I am?" like she used to scream at me. But then she stopped. She realized she was nobody. She realized she needed this job to pay for the motel room she was living in. She swallowed her pride. It must have tasted like ash. "I am sorry, sir," she whispered, keeping her head down. "I will get a rag." She wiped the table while the teenagers laughed at her and called her clumsy. It was the exact same scene she had put me through 100 times. She used to yell at me for spilling crumbs. She used to yell at waiters for bringing the wrong wine. Now she was on the receiving end of the abuse. The universe has a way of balancing the scales. She was learning the value of $1 the hard way. She was working an hour to earn what she used to spend on a latte. It was a cruel lesson, but it was the only one that would ever stick. She looked up, and for a second I thought she saw me across the street. Her eyes were hollow. There was no light in them, only exhaustion. I drove away. I could not save her from this. She had to save herself, and I was not sure she had the strength to do it. The final blow to their empire of lies came 2 weeks later in family court. The state had filed a motion to remove Leo from Kendra's custody permanently. It was not just because of the kidnapping incident with Derek. It was because in the aftermath, Kendra had fallen apart. She had turned to the bottle to numb the pain of her new reality. She had been caught driving under the influence with Leo in the car. That was the line in the sand that could never be uncrossed. I sat in the courtroom holding Leo's hand. He was wearing a little suit I had bought him, and he looked like a miniature version of the man I hoped he would become. He was quiet. He knew what was happening. Children always know. Kendra walked in late. She smelled of peppermint mouthwash trying to cover the scent of cheap vodka. Her eyes were bloodshot. She did not look at Leo. She looked at the judge with a mixture of defiance and desperation. She tried to argue. She tried to tell the judge that she was a victim, that she needed her son to heal. She cried fake tears. She made empty promises. But the judge was an older man who had seen too many broken parents to be fooled by theatrics. He looked at the police reports. He looked at the school records showing Leo's absences. He looked at the video of Kendra screaming at the police officer during her DUI arrest. Ms. Bishop, the judge, said, peering over his spectacles, "Being a mother is not a right, it is a privilege. And it is a privilege you have abused. You have failed to protect this child from a dangerous father. You have failed to provide a stable home. And you have endangered his life with your addiction," Kendra screamed. "You cannot take him. He is mine. My father is trying to steal him because he hates me." The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Hayes is not stealing him. He is saving him. I am granting full legal and physical custody to Virgil Hayes effective immediately. You are granted supervised visitation once a month pending the completion of a rehab program." Kendra collapsed into her chair, sobbing. But Leo did not run to her. He did not cry for his mother. He squeezed my hand tight. He looked up at me and I saw relief in his eyes. He felt safe. For the first time in his life, he knew where he belonged. We walked out of the courtroom past Kendra, who was being consoled by her court-appointed attorney. She looked up at me and hissed, "You won. Are you happy now? You took everything." I stopped. I looked down at her one last time. I did not feel anger. I felt a profound sadness. "I did not take anything." "Kendra," I said softly, "you gave it all away. You gave away your husband for money. You gave away your father for pride. And today you gave away your son for a drink. I did not win. We all lost. But I am the only one trying to rebuild." I walked out into the sunlight with Leo. He looked up at me. "Grandpa, can we go get ice cream now?" "Yes, Leo," I said, picking him up. "We can get anything you want." We left the courthouse behind us. We left the wreckage of the past behind us. Derek was in a cell. Kendra was in a downward spiral, but Leo was safe. And as I buckled him into the car, I made a silent promise to Etta. I promised her that this boy would grow up differently. He would know the value of hard work. He would know the value of family. And he would know that true wealth is not what you have in the bank, but who you have beside you in the car. The villains had met their fate not by my hand, but by the consequences of their own dark hearts. And the hero of this story was just a grandfather driving his grandson to get a chocolate cone ready to start a new chapter. The cemetery on the hill overlooks the old steel mill where I spent half my life. But today the smokestacks were cold, and the air up here smelled of fresh-turned earth and blooming marigolds. It was a Sunday morning, the kind of day Etta loved best. I was on my knees in the grass, not praying but working. Next to me was Leo. He was wearing a pair of denim overalls I had bought him, and his small hands were covered in dark, rich soil. We were planting Etta's favorite flowers around her headstone. For a 7-year-old boy who had been through hell just a few weeks ago, he looked remarkably peaceful. He carefully dug a hole with his trowel, placed the bulb inside, and patted the dirt down just like I had taught him. I watched him, and I saw the future. I saw a boy who would not grow up thinking that success meant driving a leased car or looking down on people who worked for a living. I saw a boy who would know that you have to get your hands dirty to make something beautiful grow. Grandpa Leo asked, wiping a smudge of dirt from his forehead, "Do you think Grandma can see the flowers?" I stopped working and looked at the gray stone. It simply said, "Etta Hayes, beloved wife and mother." I reached out and traced the letters with my rough thumb. "I think she can, Leo," I said. "I think she is sitting right here on this bench watching us, and I think she is smiling because she finally got the weeds out of her garden." I did not tell him that the weeds I was talking about were his parents. He was too young to understand the complexity of betrayal, but he was old enough to know the safety of love. We finished planting the last of the marigolds. I stood up, my knees popping, and brushed the dirt from my pants. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old blue passbook. It was tattered and the cover was bent from where Kendra had thrown it in the trash. It was empty now. The money had been moved to a secure trust for Leo's education and the park we were building in the city. But the book itself was still heavy. I placed the book on top of the headstone. The wind ruffled its pages. "You were right, Etta," I whispered. "It was junk to them. But it was everything to us. You set a trap to catch a wolf and you caught two. Rest easy, old girl. The house is clean. Leo took my hand. His grip was strong. Are we going to get ice cream now, Grandpa? He asked. I squeezed his hand back. Yes, we are. And then we are going to the library. You have a lot of reading to do if you want to run a foundation one day. We walked down the hill, leaving the passbook behind. It belonged to Etta. It was her final testament. A testament that said value is not found in a bank account, but in the heart of the person holding the book. As I drove away from the cemetery with Leo humming a song in the passenger seat, I began to think about the nature of wealth. For 68 years, I thought I was a poor man. I thought that because I packed a lunch pail and wore steel toe boots, I was somehow less than the men in the suits who ran the mill. I thought Derek and Kendra were the successful ones because they knew which fork to use at a fancy dinner and vacationed in places I could not pronounce. But I was wrong. Poverty is not a lack of money. Poverty is a lack of character. Derek and Kendra were the poorest people I had ever met. They were spiritually bankrupt long before they were financially bankrupt. They looked at a passbook with $50 and saw trash. They could not see the discipline it took to save that $50. They could not see the vision it took to invest it. They only saw the surface. That was their fatal flaw. They lived their entire lives on the surface, skating on thin ice and pretending it was solid ground. When the ice broke, they had no depth to save them. I looked at Leo. He was happy with a chocolate ice cream cone. He did not need a Porsche. He did not need a mansion. He needed safety. He needed truth. He needed to know that the person taking care of him would not sell him out for a quick payday. That is what Etta left us. She did not just leave us $18 million. That money is just paper. It can burn. It can be stolen. It can lose value. What she really left us was the truth. The money was just the spotlight she used to shine on the lies my family had been telling for years. It hurts to cut off your own flesh and blood. Do not let anyone tell you it feels good. It feels like amputating a limb. Kendra is my daughter. I remember holding her when she was a baby. I remember teaching her to ride a bike. But the Kendra I loved died a long time ago. She was replaced by a stranger who saw me as an ATM machine and her son as a bargaining chip. I had to mourn the daughter I wanted so I could protect the grandson I have. Money is a tool, like a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house, or you can use it to break a window. Derek and Kendra tried to break the window to steal what was inside. I am using the hammer to build a fortress around this boy. That is the difference. That is the legacy. The steel mill is gone. The house is sold. But the name Hayes will mean something again. It will mean integrity. And that is worth more than any trust fund. Now I turn to you, my friends, watching this story from the safety of your homes. I have told you everything. I have laid bare the ugly truth of my family and the extreme measures I took to protect what was mine. Some of you might think I was too harsh. You might look at Kendra working in a diner and say that a father should always forgive. You might look at Derek in a prison cell and say that 15 years is too long for a man who was just desperate and greedy. You might say that blood is thicker than water and I should have bailed them out one last time. But I ask you this: what is the price of your dignity? How much abuse should you take before you say enough? If someone threw your life's work in the garbage and told you to go die quietly, would you smile and write them a check? If someone held a gun to your grandchild, would you offer them mercy? I want to know what you would do. Would you have signed the papers and gone to the nursing home? Would you have let them sell the house and spend the money on sports cars while you rotted away? Or would you have fought back like I did? Would you have used the very trap they set for you to bring them down? Leave a comment below. Tell me if I am a villain or a protector. Tell me if you have ever had a Derek or a Kendra in your life. I read every single comment because your stories remind me that I am not alone in this fight. And if you believe that justice is worth fighting for, if you believe that the elderly deserve respect and that toxic family members deserve to be cut off, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story about the underdog winning. I am Virgil Hayes. I am a steelworker. I am a millionaire. But most importantly, I am a survivor. Thank you for listening. And remember, the next time you see something that looks like junk, take a closer look. It might just be the key to your freedom. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of the ones who truly love you. Through this journey, I learned that true legacy is not defined by the size of an estate, but by the strength of one's character. Etta and I spent a lifetime building a foundation of love, while Kendra and Derek spent theirs chasing the illusion of status. In the end, the $18 million was just a tool. The real treasure was the courage to stand up for the innocent. I learned that family is not just about blood, it is about behavior. And sometimes the most loving thing a father can do is close the door on toxicity to open a window for the future. If you believe that a grandfather's love is the strongest force on earth, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below.